RootsOfTheSwampThing.com, your definitive online source for all things Swamp Thing. Holland Files number 2 is out, Garrett. How is it?
Holland Files 2 was awesome. A lot of cool images that you haven't got to see in Holland Files number 1, so definitely looking forward to finishing this bad boy.
And that's not the only thing. If you want to learn more about Swamp Thing, Alex, where would you go?
You're going to go to rootsoftheswampthing.com.
Make sure to stay in touch at rootsofswampthing.com on Twitter, at DC World Swampy, Facebook.com/rootsoftheswampthing. Welcome to Wednesday Comics. To my left, we have Paul himself. Alex, how you doing?
Hello, everyone.
We say you're Paul because you're Paul. Across from me, we have the Monkey King himself. Garrett, how you doing?
I'm your greatest fear.
And to my right, the Swamp Thing himself, John Boylan, joining us tonight. How you doing, John?
Hello, good.
From rootsoftheswampthing.com, your definitive source for all things Swamp Thing. Find him on DC World Swampy on Twitter and at facebook.com/rootsoftheswampthing on Facebook. And I am Marvin. I am
Abby Arcane.
I was going to say Jason Blood, but all right.
No, you're not that cool.
He's got cool hair.
Except when he's tired. Sorry. We'll talk about it later.
We are here to talk about a book club. What kind of book club, Garrett?
Wednesday Comics League of Extraordinary Gentle People proudly presents for the month
Saga
of July
of the Swamp Thing. This is Alan Moore and John. Who are the artists in this book?
John Tuttleman and Stephen Bissett.
So are they both just artists, or are they one of them's a colorist?
They're both artists.
Okay,
they
both
kind of
just
tag team
the
books together. Yep.
This is the first start of Alan Moore's run from issue 20 to issue 27, at least the editions we read. John was informing us before the show, and some editions, they don't include that 20th issue. And they also mentioned that in the trade we read. And John, what was that reason? Why? Because it's kind of the end of
so as the title reflects, it's where Alan Moore kind of ties up the loose ends of what they were doing previously. The series was failing and readership was at an all-time low, so he just kind of wrapped it all up before he started anew.
Now, right before this run, who was on the book?
I'm pretty sure it was Martin Pascoe and Tom Yates, I believe.
So the book's not doing that great. They say, hey, Alan Moore, come in here. At this point, 1984, Alan Moore is not the Alan Moore of Watchmen, right? Watchmen's like 86. 80...
Correct. It comes a little bit later.
So this is Alan Moore who is cut his teeth on... God, what was he doing?
When was Killing Joke?
Way after.
Yeah. So Alan, prior to this, Alan Moore had been dabbling with. He was doing a bunch of stuff with 2000 AD. He was doing a series of stuff.
That's what I was going to say. Yeah.
And as well as a couple other books, but he was doing a lot of very small independent series or runs.
And then they say, "Come on board. We got a Swamp Thing for you." And here he goes. He ties up some loose ends, and which
I just have to laugh about Alan Moore coming out on this project though, because if you read that forward, Alan Moore returning a phone call to Len Wein, I was like, "Do you try to do that nowadays? Won't happen." Were you talking about Alan Moore's character, who he is now?
Yeah. Okay, I know. I don't know.
Just pointing out the good old days.
I'm just saying I had something in my head and that made me forget for some reason. I don't know why. Oh, I was going to say that. So just so you know, like any other book club, the whole thing's spoilers. So we're not even going to have a non-spoiler read. This is for people we read the book. We've given you 3 months.
Even more than 3 months.
We give you a couple extra weeks.
Extra weeks here, and
3 decades.
We know you guys are reading it because
it's 30 years to read the book.
We know you're reading in Sioux Falls because the library's out of it, and also digitally they're out of it. So I assume you all picked it up.
Bravo.
And read it. So issue 20 starts this loose end of the Swamp Thing. He is running. He killed in the last issue. He killed
Anton.
Arcane.
Yeah, so what happened was Anton Arcane was back. He came into kind of the universe, and he has this crazy-looking dragonfly spaceship thing, and he has captured Abby, and Swamp Thing is trying to get Abby back, and in the process, the plane crashes, they escape, and where this starts off is Swamp Thing finds the wrecked ship, and he approaches Anton Arcane's dead body.
And the government at this point says, hey, we need to do something. Just like Close Encounters, they're expecting some sort of government intervention. And so they move in to try to find this alien, and it turns out there's a Swamp Thing, and they know about him. They surround the woods. There's a blinding white light. What was that? The white light around
They put up like floodlights. Mm-hmm. Bat signals without the bat. All over the place.
Floodlight. They flooded the swamp.
Spotlights.
And spotlights.
That's what a floodlight is.
Here comes Alec out of the woods, and he says, hey, I'm mostly invulnerable. Let me go towards these guys and then get shot dead.
No, you better go in more detail on that. He gets obliterated by like 20 bullets.
Because he like walks through the first like 6 or 7 shots. Oh, it's not kill him, shoot him in the head.
And then it's like literally like the oh fuck moment. Like Morgan Freeman and a wanted oh fuck, like getting destroyed.
And then so John, he goes up and gets shot out. Now, there's more to it, obviously. Alan Moore does it in a flourish way, like he tells a story, and that Alan Moore dialogue that you're used to. Now, Alan Moore in the future with Watchmen and stuff he does in League of Extraordinary Gentlemen, based on this book club, that name.
There you go.
He is known to be a guy to be like, here is what you're going to draw. Word like down to his scripts are huge. And it's like, you're going to do this, this, and this. At this point, have you read any of these scripts before that Alan Moore's done for these issues?
No, but I've read a ton of articles about the back and forth with Moore, Toddleman, Bissett, and it was very like collaborative.
Okay, so he's not the Alan Moore that's like, do this, do this.
Well, I'm sure he did, but at again, I haven't read the original scripts, but from getting to know Stephen Bissett, I've found that like, I think that even if Moore said that, Bissett would and Toddleman would be like, yeah, no, we hear you, but here we're going to do this.
So something I found great about this, and you kind of see it in the first issue, is that art is so great. Like even so, I read digitally, and I started out in guided view, panel by panel, and eventually I could see that like it wasn't normal size panels, and like there's something going on. So I was like, what am I doing? So I went full page on this thing. And I was like, this is the way to read this thing. Like it's not straightforward, 6-panel grid or anything like this. It's and there's a great part where there's a lot of border stuff going on, and where Swamp Thing is on the left, and then you got 3 panels or 4 panels, and then the next page he's on the right. And I like the way that it's set up because when you're reading it, it's no longer just these panels. Like all that stuff around it kind of is enough to like engulf you in like what's happening, and then. There are some other panels later on that aren't standard, and the whole thing. That's the one thing that blew me away with this. Rereading the first 2 issues. By the way, I found out. I told these guys beforehand. I thought I read this before. Get to issue 22, 23, and I was like, hey, never read this before. So I guess I only read like the first couple, and I was like, yeah, I got that done. So I'm reading this, and throughout this whole this book one. I would stop her and once in a while be like, and just stare at it, be like, this is great panel work. And so I was just wondering, like, is this the Alan Moore that's like, this is Alan Moore only, or is it really a collaborative effort between all of them being like, this is
so what you find out as the series progresses, those 3 creative kind of giants now being on the book is the panel layouts get psychedelic and interactive where you're being forced to turn the book and stuff like that. And there's no way that Moore could have written such detailed, in-depth content and then also been able to direct all the panel layouts and stuff. And Bissett and Toddleman are just like masters at that. It's insane.
Yeah. So the first issue, it's that, and then he's gone, and then we get anatomy lessons, right? And rereading this issue, because like I said, I got to this issue last time. Rereading this issue, and I want to actually ask you guys for reading the first time, and then John for like, how many times have you read this issue?
I have no idea. Just the shit. Probably be
rereading this issue for the second time. This here might be one of the best single issues of all time. I read this issue and I was just like, it's fantastic. There's nothing in this whole issue that I could be like, oh, maybe that's not as great. And like the word choices, the way that it's kind of like almost like poetry, and the art and the slowly descending into horror. Like you start off with like it's kind of cold because he's dead, and like they're more explaining like the science behind it, and then the more that you realize that they drop this bomb of that he's not actually Alec and he's just a monster, and you dehumanize him in that moment, being like, no, this is not who you thought he was, and he is just a swamp thing. And then he hears that or reads the files and believes that himself, that he descends into that, and then you get that horror section where he's just like full out turns to a horror book at that point. And they announced that Swamp Thing show, and they announced it's going to be a horror book, and which for the longest time, like I was like, oh, I know there's like horror origins, right? But like, what really can you do? And reading throughout this book, as somebody who just, like I was saying before the podcast, as somebody who was like really into like Scott Snyder and Charles Soule and like all that kind of stuff, this is really reminded me of being like, oh yeah, it can do horror, and Swamp Thing can do horror, and it's fantastic.
I think it's the best. I agree that it's like the best issue of this first volume. I mean, I loved it. And I think I did. I mean, I kind of half went back and read some of it again because it is kind of like a mystical poem of like the anatomy of Swamp Thing. And like I got entranced with it. And by the end, like I think that issue went by the quickest when I was reading because I was just like, this is so good. Like, I don't think anyone's ever done that before, tried to break down Swamp Thing or anything like that. And then while you're studying Swamp Thing, you're also getting introduced to Woodrow, I can't, Fluoride Man, Fluorescent Man, Floronic Man. There we go. So it was very well done. And, prior to this, in John's Holland Files 2, that's where I read about the anatomy the first time. And I was so entranced by that. And then to kind of see it play in action in this issue, it's like, it's crazy where all this world building, it just happens from like literally what's on there for like 3 pages.
See, for me, issue 21 was actually the slowest issue, but a lot of it was the transition of me realizing what this character is. Because that first issue 20 for us was like, oh, okay, he got shot. Well, that was kind of anticlimactic for me. And then you get into this and it's like, oh wow, there's science, and kind of, you guys keep saying this word, it is poetry, because I really did get kind of brought into this book going, wow, one, the art was so good, the word choices, the way it's placed, where it's at. I really did enjoy this issue, and I really felt bad for, he's dead now, but Alec. I thought, wow, this poor creature thinks that he's a person in this monstrosity, when it turns out all I am is literally this swamp monster who thinks I'm a person.
For the Swamp Thing history, this book is so pivotal because, first of all, when Moore comes on, he instantly kills the character. Like he gets the character he wants to work on, and he immediately kills it, and then he immediately brings it back, and then he raises the bar because the writing is absolutely superb, and he's able to build upon the history of the character, and he brings it back to life. He instantly says that he's no longer Alec Holland. He just breaks through all these barriers. And like you had touched upon before, he uses all this pseudoscience that make it feel like this is absolutely real. And it's so easy to buy into.
And so it makes me think it's facts.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's the craziest story or single issue, I want to say, in the Swamp Thing history, because it really just takes this amazing character and just breaks the egg open, and you're like, there's more? Like, I didn't know you could do more. It's amazing.
I see, kind of looking, we were lucky that, John actually has the original covers from this storyline. He brought them in today, and like you're looking at these, and it's kind of like the covers for what actually happens in the story. I don't know if you've heard, that's kind of my gripe. Like, I like to see a little preview of what's going on in the comic. Like, these kind of somewhat tell what's going on, but like, especially for the anatomy issue, like, that is kind of horrifying. But I think it'd be cool to put that a diagram you have in your Holland Files as the cover for that. Like, I thought that would have been a good choice. But you can tell that's kind of the way comics were back then. It was like, look at this craziest part of this book, and this is what we want you to focus on. Yeah.
So between the 20th and 21st issue, so in 20, I'm just looking back here real quick. 20 is very that panel work I was talking about. It really isn't not introduced in 20, but those borders are in 20, and then the jump to 21. And they really go crazy with the panel work, and the borders are kind of gone. And that's the same artist, right? So do you know, like, what's the choice in like doing that? Like, that they want to show like that kind of change, being like, this is going to be different than how it was before? Like, what's the
I haven't heard a reason for that, but my guess would be that Loose Ends issue 20 was considered just a filler or like the bridge, and then 21 was like, all right, now it's our
now
title.
This is what we're going to do. Yeah. Maybe kind of honoring what it was before.
Right.
Like, this is the loose end. We're going to continue what was happening before. Let's do this. And even kind of like that language we were talking about before, the way Moore talks about, like the way Swamp Thing is talking, the way Woodrow is like explaining this monster in the 21st issue is way more colorful. In the first issue, it's kind of just like, and there actually, to be fair, also there's a couple scenes in the 20th issue between Abby and Matt that are a little kind of like on the nose, and it's kind of like, well, but then when you get to 21, it's like fantastic and such a change that I think, you definitely see that being like, okay, let's do this quick and make this make sense, and then like you said, kill this guy off, and I'm going to start anew.
Yeah, and even so, during prior to Moore taking over, Swamp Thing, Abigail, Swamp Thing, Liz Tremaine, who we see very briefly, and Dennis Barclay, who we see very briefly, they leave the book in issue 20. And so, like, Loose Ends, like Moore gets rid of a lot of that crap. And
it's like like they left and literally into the sunset.
Well, but if you read the previous issues, you're so sick and tired of those two.
Oh, really?
So you're happy to see him leave. But the great thing is Liz Tremaine comes back further down the road, and I don't remember what issue, but her and Abby become best friends in Homa. And so it's really cool.
What happens to Dennis?
Dennis is just he goes away.
She killed him.
Yeah, he gets really bitter and eventually goes away.
Oh gosh. Well, back to this anatomy issue. I think the ending was so amazing. Like when the old man, he's like standing there on his desk and he's like, "Did you read that file?" Like talking to this beast that you assume isn't intelligent, and then you just see like Swamp Thing go, "Yes, I read it," and then he just freaks out, and like, the way he kills that old man is terrifying. He like puts him against his chest. Does he like absorb his bodily fluids? He
basically smothers him into his chest. Yeah.
Holy.
And the great thing about that too is so the main bad guy in this is General Sunderland, and Sunderland Corp has been a thorn in Swamp Thing's pod like from the get-go. The reason why Swamp Thing is who he is because General Sunderland sent his goons down to Homa to get his biorestorative formula.
Right.
They blew up the lab and then he became Swamp Thing. So ever since he became Swamp Thing, initially Arcane nabbed him for the first few issues, but then after that it was nothing but the Sunderland Corporation trying to find him because they wanted to get the any remaining biorestorative formula from his body.
Crazy.
Issue 21, when Swamp Thing finally kills him, it's like this perfect full circle.
Right.
He finally got his revenge and he got to learn who he was.
Well, and I thought it also was very dark. Sunderland explains how like they basically dug up Linda, that's his wife's name, right?
Yep.
And like did an autopsy and was like, she had the formula in her, but she's not a plant.
Yeah.
And then like, what the fuck? You like dug her? Oh, that's horrible.
Yeah.
What poor life for that lady.
I'll admit that might be the one thing that I was missing was the why. I mean, I realized he read this page, this what's the right word I'm looking for? Document telling that you're not actually Alec. I was like, okay, I guess that would kind of piss me off too. I just spent years thinking I am. I didn't realize that he's part of the reason why he got transformed into him.
And Swamp Thing, like, I think in the back of his head, he always thought, like, well, I'm a scientist. I made this shit. I can turn myself back into a human. And they say in the book, like, you're not going back. Like, the organs you have aren't actually organs. Like,
There's things that your body makes you think you're supposed to have.
Exactly.
Well,
that's cool.
There's that part. What's the bug? The worm?
The worm.
That they talk about that the
plumerian worms. Yeah.
They can remember even though they've been consumed, and like you can gain memories that way, and that's what happened with the plant.
Yeah.
And when they go through that part where they talk about all the organs that Swamp Thing has, just because it remembers having them, and he goes through and he goes, "Oh, need this? Why do he needs it? Like, why would he have this?" And he's like, and then he realizes, "Oh, this is just here because this is what it's always known."
Yeah.
And that part, like Alex was saying, like it's terrifying to be like, well, slowly realizing, be like, wow, look how messed up this is.
Yeah.
And then when he freaks out, like you said, he was like, he always thought that he could go back, and that's what he's been, alive for, and keep moving forward, being like, don't worry, I'm going to figure this out.
Yeah.
And then to realize you're not real. Like that's the scariest thing in horror. There's this I forget what it might be Stephen King, it might be Ray Bradbury. That's a big range, but it's one of those two. That there's a story about this guy that when they transport or teleport, excuse me, that it actually kills you. And then you just get recreated on the other side, so you actually do die, and that person is just a clone. And but the person has all the memories, and they just assume that you're you, and they actually don't know that they're not. But people think they invented this transportation system, but they're actually killing themselves and getting recloned, and that's what they created. And then the scientists who built it knew it, but they're just like, "Hey, this is a new transportation system," because who knows? Like, if you got a clone identically, just like Swamp Thing, he thought he was Alec. There's no difference. And how horrifying that is to be like, to think you're something. Like, imagine, like, Garrett, imagine, like, all of a sudden they were like, hey, you realize you're not actually real, and they show you that you're a robot.
You know,
your whole life.
I do have a twin. How come he stayed alive?
Can you imagine that? They were like, hey,
I want a refund on my teleportation.
You're not real anymore.
And there's something very comforting about knowing, like, I'm me inside me.
Yeah.
But for him to realize, like, you're not even you.
Yeah.
So if you're plant material and you can live everywhere, your essence can just go everywhere. That would be terrifying. Being a human, there's just something so nice that, like, I can go to this room and be alone, and but Swamp Thing can't turn off the plants. He can't stop hearing them. He can't stop feeling, Well,
like what we find out later too, like what Woodrow's experience, we'll talk about that later, when he's in tune with the green, like that's what Swamp Thing is always hearing. It's kind of like if someone's like praying to a god, like they hear all those prayers. It's like the same thing. It's like, that's so overwhelming. Like, how do you do normal things when there's all that chatter? You're like,
Or like,
I have an answer to it, but we'll wait until we get to that part.
Have you seen those amazing videos where people, whether they hear for the first time or they see color for the first time? That's how I imagine it would be, but 1,000,
Oh yeah, you're right. Like
every single... Oh, yeah. Oh, it would be terrible.
Microsecond of everything.
Well, it's just like that scene in, I don't know why I'm quoting this scene, but in Man of Steel, when Clark can hear everything, right? And like the way that they show you that, it's just like all this noise. And she's like, you got to make it smaller, and like you have to learn to hone it. It's just like that, too. It's like...
You knew you loved that movie.
People get crazy when they're in a room that's loud when they can just hear 10, 20 people. Like, imagine hearing everything. And it's like you said, there's so much plant. There's more plant life than humans on the planet.
There's plant life in this room, and there could not be a plant. Like, it's in your stomach. It's in your colon.
Everywhere.
I
was also going to say that it's also terrifying on a level for Swamp Thing to figure that out, because to him, he's still Alec. And to know, like, he feels like Alec, his memories are Alec. So to be like, no, you died and still be alive. Technically, I mean, and for him, he's alive. So to be like, you're dead. So in a way, he is, living beyond his actual life, and to reconcile that, be like, I'm not supposed to be alive right now, and that's why he goes crazy. I think there's also something in his head that he's like, there's nothing's worth anymore. Let me just go berserk. Why do I need morals anymore? I'm not a person anymore. And he goes crazy, and then in the next issue, we see he just goes into total depression. He becomes swamped. It's what the issue starts with. The title.
Rooted.
And what?
Well, he gets rooted.
I know, but the issue's called Swamped. It says. And he becomes the swamp. He's like, well, fuck, I'm the plant. I'm going to be a plant. He's like, screw this. I'm not a human anymore. And Matt and Abby are going to the swamp, and they see him. And Woodrow is... He goes, let me spray some of this fucking skin on, and walks out, and he's like, hey,
don't talk to him. Don't look at him.
He's like, I'm a botanist, and I'm trying to figure out, like, he found out that he's not Alec anymore, and they, and he goes, hey, and she's showing him, like, he's not really responding. He's just like this plant now. He went back into his hole, and showing them, like, they're potatoes, right? Or what are they called?
They call them tubers, but they're just sweet potatoes, And
it's like, see, he's making these things. And she goes, oh, they might be edible. And she throws up. Being like, because for her also, like, this was Alec, and this was, like, her friend, and to think that now he's just a plant, and, like, when you associate, plants, that it is edible, and he's actually just food now. Like, he's actually literally producing food. And that also, like, this thing gets more horrifying as you go on, because the way he's looking now, it's like all the personality or all the human of him is gone. And that's what he is. He's just plants. And later on in this issue, when they take those tubulars and he goes and cooks them and he eats them, and he goes, "They are edible." I was like, I stared at that and I was like, "This fucking dude's freaky." And I was reading it, and I also thought, so this might be spoilers for future stuff, but does he see somebody? Because I don't believe I ever saw him in Scott's run or Charles' run. That guy never comes back.
He does, yeah. Actually, he comes back as the Cedar.
Oh, that's him.
Yeah. Yep.
Buddy.
So what's the Floronic Man's power? That's what I couldn't understand.
The Floronic Man is a plant human hybrid. He like turned himself into a plant and stuff like that. And he's always tries to find cheats, whether through Poison Ivy, Swamp Thing, all these other characters
to get attuned to the green.
Yeah, to get more in tune with the green. And he's lost his goddamn mind. In fact, there's a really great two-issue series or two-issue Batman run. I think it's in Detective Comics where Floronic Man comes back to Gotham. He gets a meeting with Poison Ivy, takes her down under his secret lair under the city, and his idea is to create reefer madness. And he's growing marijuana to get everyone completely off their gourd, and so he can take over the world. And Poison Ivy's just like, "You're out of your freaking mind." She's like, "I'm out."
So a question I had actually, and it doesn't really come up till later, but since we're talking about it, this character, did he exist before
his first appearance was Adam #1 as Dr. Jason Woodrue.
Okay, but so later on the Justice League talk about that they fought him before.
Yeah, and also he's the fellow that turned Poison Ivy into what she became. So he has a long history with messing with all the big names. And he was also in was it Secret Society of Supervillains? I might be wrong about that. But one of those villain crews, the miniseries.
Is that way you're going back with Poison Ivy now? They have a connection between him?
Sure. Yeah. Yep.
So, I can't believe you blew my mind that he's the Cedar, because actually now when I read that part, especially towards the end of these issues when they're fighting, like when he tells them like, "You're ruining the green, you're actually not helping the green, and like you're killing it," and I was like, "This seems familiar." Like I'm pretty sure the Cedar, and I was like, and for a second there I was like, I'm pretty sure like, "Hey Scott, you stole this stuff or what's going on here?"
When he popped back up, I was like, if Woodrue gets power, I'm going to be so pissed, because he keeps getting. He's like a comedy character, like, or he's just like Wile E. Coyote. Yeah. Like he's so persistent, but he's such an idiot.
So in this issue, he eats them. Yeah, that happens.
He does. In fact, this what's kind of a pivotal moment in Swamp Thing history with this issue is Moore introduces the powerful tubers. So we just get a little glimpse of what they can, the powers that the tuber harnesses. But later on, we find out that when Abby eats the tuber, she can like psychically connect with Swamp Thing. But that comes later down the line. But anyway, Moore introduces like yet another amazing thing for the Swamp Thing history and his capabilities.
So wait. Later in the book, when Abby and Swamp Thing are talking, they're literally just talking to each other. He can speak.
Yeah, sure can.
Okay, he doesn't have organs. How the fuck is he speaking? He doesn't have vocal cords.
But so just like how he has fake lungs.
He doesn't have to breathe. He even tells her, "I don't need to breathe."
I know, but he does, because his human brain.
Bull crap.
And he's also got a lockpick behind his fake teeth that he brings out when he's ever captured.
Hey, that bug. You know what? You want your covers to make sense,
but it's a toothpick because it's wood, so it's not metal.
What happened?
It's Alex's like tick brain. Like everything has to make sense.
When Rebirth came out, Batman is locked up in a cell and he spits out a tooth, and then he unlocks the thing that he's stuck in. It's like, what the hell did that come from?
They don't actually.
But just imagine this: the day you were born, you were treated and trained just like a dog, right? And you start, just bear with. I'm not calling you a dog, but like a dog. You let's just say you can scratch behind your ear with your leg. You lap water out of a bowl, and then all of a sudden someone comes up to me like, "Hey asshole, you're a human, not a dog." You would act. It would just be the same thing for Swamp Thing.
He would know how to talk because he always thought he could. Talk.
Right, and he breathes through these fake plant lungs because he thought he could.
Yeah. Okay.
Shut
up, John, with your freaking logic.
You're a dog.
Real science about fiction.
Yeah.
This issue also has a lot of dreams from Swamp Thing. He's dreaming about all these people, like situations he's had before, and we see him really trying to figure out like what's going on with him, and like trying to reconcile this information that he's got because he's not human anymore, and seeing what's really worth it anymore. And also we see, like you said, Woodrow eats these potatoes.
Tubers.
But I was wondering about the tubers then too. So does Woodrow then get secondary visions of Alcoholin's life then? Because
no, he would but he would harness the power of the green.
Okay.
Yeah. So
but he had nothing to do with Swamp Thing because he's not a human.
Right.
Okay.
Yep.
Gotcha.
Connects to the green, baby. Avatar.
Yeah, it's a very cathartic issue for Swamp Thing, but also for everyone. Like, I find it really funny that for a few issues, well, for almost Moore's entire series, people are just in a state of pandemonia. Like, Abigail's husband is a drunk, and he's like now summoning demons, and he's able to like make her clothes dance for him, like in this creepy sexual way.
Yeah, that's
Abby's
weird.
just going to shit. Her life is hell. Like, her uncle tried to kill her. It's just all this mess. So like everyone's life is just turmoil, and like they're just like, why isn't Swamp Thing waking up?
We were talking about before the podcast that every once in a while there's some language in here that made me stop and like just reread. There was in this issue one part where after he's eaten the tubulars and he turns and goes, "What would you have me do?"
Tubulars.
What's up?
Tubers.
Tubulars.
Yeah, without the L.
No L.
Now from Keebler.
Yeah.
Bite-sized tubulars.
I got a Tlumer.
He
Green
goes,
Tlumer.
and somewhere in the breathing jungle of his mind, the small and sacred mammal that was Jason Woodrow switches once and then lies still. I thought it was fucking great. It began to rain blossom. He is the pharaonic man, and all that was once human is now consumed, engulfed, swamped. And that's how the issue ends. I was like, this is fucking fantastic. Then we move on here to issue 23. By the way, 75 cents. Back in the day.
Drawing the line.
This is still actually also, too, when the Comics Court Authority was approving these issues. There's a lot of stuff in here I'm surprised that made it past and like it's in these issues.
When not long after this, they dropped the Comics Code altogether.
Is that like a 5 to 10 year when they drop the code? Because I remember there's a dark time in comics where the code gets dropped by a lot of books, isn't it?
Yeah. I think Marvel. So when Stan Lee was putting drugs into Spider-Man books, that's when the code didn't approve it, and they said no, and then Stan Lee's like, well, I know this is a good message, and you guys are just all you can see is the word drugs or see,
Yeah.
So he got rid of the code for I think it was like 5 issues, and then sales were amazing, and because of that, the code revised their codes.
Oh,
Yeah, but Swamp Thing, they dropped the code pretty darn quickly. Unfortunately, I don't remember which issue. Probably like 27, 28, something like that. I'll have to go back and look. But
So on this issue here, we start with Swamp Thing getting his form back, and he climbs this tree here, right? And he goes up to like the heart of the green, right? Is that what this is?
he climbs a tree. Yep.
And so, like in the first couple issues, or actually in that one issue in Anatomy Lessons, he does really look like a monster, and he's all like disheveled, but also he's like there's like more plants hanging from him and stuff like that. In this issue, we get the Swamp Thing that is very toned, a very big and structured Swamp Thing, like the guy you have in your arm there, and so he changes constantly, right?
Mm-hmm.
Is this the most classic look of the Swamp Thing? Is it how he looks like in this issue?
Ooh, there's some arguments that would go there because Bernie Wrightson's would be the classic look.
Yeah.
But I think if in terms of popularity, if people know, for sure. Like some of these splash pages, like it's everywhere.
Let's say they're making this TV show. Which is the one they're going to use?
This one they're going to use.
This one they're going to use?
Because the great thing about Wrightson's was it was more of like a classic monster. Like he had like smoother skin, less detail and stuff like that. But I think that also had to do a lot with time because Wrightson could detail the heck out of a lot of that stuff. But I think just the design worked, like just a little more simple.
And then here Swamp Thing has a great moment after he climbs that tree. Somewhere quiet, somewhere green and timeless, I drift, the cellular landscape stretching beneath me, eerie, silent, beautiful. My awareness expanding out throughout the forgotten root system. Am I at peace? Am I happy? And then he just stared. This is a great panel, like art-wise. He's just like, yes. Oh, yes. And yet there's a sense of something foreign among the green, something wrong. I search for it, mind feeling its way through the filaments, the fibers. There. And that's when he figures out. So, like, So he has this moment where he realizes that he's happy, he gets connected to everything, and he realizes the peace of it, that tranquility, being like, I'm not an Alec, but I am the Swamp Thing.
Yeah.
And he accepts it, and then he's like, wait, something's wrong now with my domain.
Yeah.
Let's go figure out what's going on. And that's when he realizes.
Yeah, so he's inside, his subconscious is inside the green, or like the plant essence, so he's seeing all like the microbiology, like big and small and all that. And then he feels that this comfortable balance is all of a sudden like shooken by Jason Woodru's action.
So the idea of being attached to the green, is that something from the beginning, or is that something Alan Moore?
Alan Moore starts that.
So this is like the first mention of, hey, I'm connected to the green. So in Scott Snyder's run, there's a lot of explaining the green. Does Alan Moore ever try to explain it, or just there?
Alan Moore does an amazing job of establishing very simply what the green is, and then he introduces the Parliament of Trees, this like wiser old group of plant elementals. And Scott Snyder, to me, just talked way too much about it. Like what he did with the green and the red was far too convoluted. See,
for me at least, and this is somebody who I was reading that without knowing all the Alan Moore stuff, but it did seem like, I'll phrase it this way, it's probably making it sound worse than it actually is, or maybe not. You'll agree, or not agree. It reminds me of like in the original trilogy for Star Wars, you're like the Force. It's like this mysterious thing, and then they're like, let's explain it. Yeah. And then the prequels are like, it's midichlorians, all this stuff, and you're like, hold up a second. Like, I liked it better when it was just, I didn't know what was going on.
Yeah.
And it really seems like you're just explaining and taking away all the mystery that makes it cool.
Well, and also when you read these books, you see how much Alan Moore explains things.
Yeah.
And to elaborate on that it's ridiculous. It's like if someone says something perfectly the first time, you do not need to try to like recap in your own words,
Yeah, I mean, I guess that's the thing we've talked about multiple times on the podcast, that I have an issue with Scott. He's always like, let me explain this for 3 issues.
Yeah.
And every panel is like 1,500 words. That's like, no, dude, calm down. I don't need to know everything about this. So he goes off and he's like, something's wrong here, right? And he moves on. By the way, I'm sure it's beautiful in those pages, but digitally, like these 2-page like spreads, fantastic. Like I was talking before, like that was my biggest takeaway. Even though Alan Moore, like I knew Alan Moore though. That's the thing. Alan Moore's been celebrated, but the artist on this book, like for me, was a mystery. Like I've seen them. What else have they done past Swamp Thing?
Who, say again? I'm sorry.
The artist. Like, what have they gone on to do? Like anything?
Oh, what have they gone on to do?
Yeah.
Oh, Bissett did a ton of stuff. Toddleben also worked with Alan Moore on Miracle Man. He did all those. Man, I draw blank. Unfortunately, my realm is Swamp Thing. Stephen Bissett has done a ton of horror books. Recently, he put out a huge publication. What is it? Cryptid Monsters of Cinema History or something. He also had a series T-Rex or Rex. Yeah, that's the only thing that's coming to mind. But they are like, you talk to anyone and you say Bissett and Toddleben, like they're huge names, but unfortunately nothing's popping up.
This is like their claim to fame is these issues.
Yeah.
Just like how like people say like Dave Gibbons on Watchmen.
Yeah.
It's like that, but that's what he's known for.
Yeah, but the amount of work that guy did, holy crap.
So actually the next scene, so this is the part, look, so that anatomy lessons show me that the horror could be done, and then we get in the next scene these kids in their car, and it's like a classic horror slasher scene.
Yeah.
And it actually did make me like kind of like, I don't know why, but it made me happy and like smile, being like, this is pretty cool. And it actually, like I kept saying, all this did here is like, and then we know that James Wan's directing some episodes of the Swamp Thing, be like, okay, he knows that it's horror, and they're gonna go full horror on this thing. It makes me so excited to watch this thing now, more than I was before.
Yeah.
And this scene here, it's weird to say because 2 kids like fucking die, but it's a pretty fun scene, I think.
Yeah, they're out in the swamp drinking beers and throwing cans around, and Jason Woodrue walks up and. He kills both of them, but there's this one panel where Jason Woodrue's looking up at the trees at the silhouette of their legs dangling from the trees because he choked them and strangled them in the trees. It's terrifying.
And that's the first murders he does, right?
Well, he's killed a lot more people, but just in this little miniseries, in this little trade paperback, yeah.
Okay. Yeah, that's like I see that bottom panel is terrifying. The way he's just staring.
Swamp Thing then uses that as an opportunity because he killed him with some plant life. He comes up there and he goes, there's another mind in the green, a red mind, and it crawls like cancer, painting everything with a stickly darkness of old blood. I feel a name. Woodrow. Who is Woodrow? Do I know him once back in the red world? I forget so much. I remember a man who drank. What was his name? Not Woodrow. He had a wife, a beautiful wife, white hair like Avalanche Abigail. Yes. So like now, this guy who's died and came back, he's like finally, even though he knows it's not Alec anymore, he's still like. So I imagine here that he had Alex's memories, and he's like, I'm not that guy anymore, and he kind of purges it, and now he's just like being like. Maybe accepting me like I can still remember this stuff, like he's getting it back, right? So
it's kind of he deals with this for many issues, and even like recent ones, like dealing with the whole humanity and trying to get back and all that. But it's almost like if he kind of like turned the computer off and he turned it back on, and like things are just starting to like warm
Load up
again.
Yeah.
I got a question. So is the red? Is that the green is plant life? Mm-hmm. And is red like fleshy animal
flesh?
Okay.
Basically, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
There's a great 1500 issue Rot World crossover if you want to read it.
It's so convoluted. But like, okay, so I'm
Who made that?
reading Jeff Lemire
And Scott's name.
yeah.
Oh.
But what's funny is reading when I was reading that when each issue was coming out, I was like, please kill me now. Like you had to bounce back and forth between Animal Man and Swamp Thing, and like the Animal Man issues were not as good as the Swamp Thing, and then some of the Swamp Thing ones suffered because they were trying to rope in the animal. It was just like enough.
Oh, no.
Before that crossover, Anime was great.
Yeah.
And then that crossover happened, and I don't know if they both were like, we don't want to do this, do we? Or maybe Jeff, I didn't feel like Jeff really wanted to do that.
There was like 5 issues where like they were just trying to escape the demons that were trying to kill him, and it's like just like that could have been done in one issue.
But yeah, Alex, the red is like flesh and like humans and animals and all this, but also like especially in Animal Man, like when they pass on, they're still like flesh, and they come back like as rotting
they're
flesh,
decomposed.
yeah.
And, okay.
So like zombies, and they come back as zombies and monsters. So Abby comes upon the dead people in the next scene, right?
Mm-hmm. She sure does. She comes upon the 2 killed teenagers,
and she calls out for Alex. She calls for a friend, and he is. So what's he doing this part? I see he's flying through the green, right?
Yeah, so he's emerging from the green, and his body starts to reanimate from laying down. And then he feels the disturbance with the green, with Woodger's tampering, and then he also feels the connection of Abby in trouble, and then he springs back to life and basically takes part in life again, basically.
He's like, I have a reason to exist.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah, that's a cool scene when he pops out too.
Yeah.
What? I'm sorry.
I like how many things are living in him. Like there's a frog, all these vines, all sorts. I mean, that's awesome.
Yeah, I just one thing I enjoy envisioning is so there's that panel where the husk of his body is laying down, and like his mouth and eye sockets are filled with puddles of water, and I just think like, or I imagine when he's reviving from the green into the world. Like, can you imagine all the water and nutrients that has to just swell up inside his body? I bet it's like this giant mass of dead weight just like rising up. Oh, I bet it'd be terrifying. So to see that splash page where like frogs and flowers and butterflies are all flying out from him, but like also inside him, I don't know, like those animals have been there for God knows how long. And in fact, I found a really great quote in within issue 22, or excuse me, it was in Amazing Heroes back in the 80s, early 80s, and Alan Moore was talking about his plans for the book, and he's like, yeah, we're gonna do all sorts of wild things with him. We even have him doing nothing for an entire month.
The character design for I'm sorry, what's his name? Fluoride Man?
Floronic Man.
Floronic Man.
That's what I keep thinking too, is Fluoride Man.
I know.
It's like,
If nothing else, flora means plant.
It's toothpaste boy.
Floronic.
yes.
Who knows? I don't know. He's pretty clean.
Yeah.
The way he looks looks fantastic. I like the way he looks. It's like he has moments, or not moments, but places where there's plant life. Like he feels the need to have plant life over his genitals.
Yeah.
And it's like, but he's so human on that level to be like, I gotta cover
exactly.
these
Yeah.
and shoulder his like protect his joints, and it's like, so he's still human with plan on him. And I love that it's like you can tell like he's not full plan.
Yeah,
like he just,
and his insecurities come through based on what he manifests.
and then see, like you said, here's Abby, and there's a great page. If you're looking at the book, it's 101, where the panel work is like these panels that kind of crescendo down, and it leads to boom. Here's Swamp Thing going to come save her. I love that. And then the next page is a nice splash page, and it's that moment there is like when every once in a while you see this great moment in comics where you're like, this is what comic books can do when they do it, and it's great, and that's it right there. Like to use those panels, to use that moment to be like to set up that mood and set up that moment to be like, here he is. When I read that part, that was one of the parts too. I went back and forth. I was like, I just stared at it, being like, fantastic.
Yeah. The whole creative team really sets the bar for how comic books can be, and I feel like this. Alan Moore's run of Swamp Thing is very similar to like when people talk about bands, like this band didn't sell a lot of records, but everyone who heard that album started a band. And I feel like that's like this. Everyone who read this was like, holy shit, comics can do that? Like, this is next level.
I mean, you see why now they're like, DC was like, hey, what do you want to do? Like, we even Watchmen, they gave him all the stuff to do, and like Killing Joke, and like you can see why after this he became the Alan Moore that we know now, that's a legend. But also, like, when I was reading this, also a moment of clarity, I'll say, that I had, and I told you before we started, or maybe I said in the podcast already, I'm not sure. I'm going to reiterate if I did. I read this whole series, and I thought to myself, I've been kidding myself for all these years. That Scott Snyder run is not as good as I thought it was. That Charles Soule run is not as good as I thought it was. Like, this is 10 times better, if not more. And like, this is something, like you were saying, that shows like what comics can do. And when I finished this right away, in my head, I thought about some people who like dabble in comics, and they was asking me like, what should I get started on? And people always say Watchmen, and they say, like these classic books. And it really should be one of those books. Yeah. And I don't know why like it's not like up there to be like, hey, read this.
Yeah. This would be a book to me that you would teach in a college class. Yeah. If you're going to talk about comic books, this book has got everything you could want. Like, I'm looking at it right now going, oh, the way that the people look, the humans look, there's not a lot of detail. They're kind of meh. I'm looking at this page 101 or 103 or 102 in this book. Something is so defined on all the vines, all the little green leaves, and all these other little things. Blows my mind that these guys could have made this look, and it looks, I would say it looks busy, but it looks so real and it looks natural, because that's really what that would look like. He's not just one kind of plant, he's just a whole shitload of everything that grows in the swamp.
Now, you said you have a relationship with Bissett, right? You've talked to him before?
Yeah. He's actually contributing to the Holland Files 3. Ooh. And I sent him a few books, like, last month or something like that.
So do you think that his and his buddy's drawing room was just all green plants everywhere to kind of, like, get inspiration?
Well, back then, I have no idea. I don't know.
That'd be a cool interview question.
It's like, I can't get over, growing up, they had this Swamp Thing cartoon. And I've never seen more than episode one, or I think it's the first 2 episodes. There's a VHS that we own.
Yeah, there's only 5 episodes. So
okay,
you've seen the bulk of it.
This is also going to bring some closure to my life, knowing that, because I had this VHS. I'm pretty sure it's just 1 or 2 episodes. And I would watch that thing all the time.
You have the Unmen Unleashed.
Yes.
Yeah.
So much so. Do you know how many episodes? Is it the first one or the second?
The very first 2, I want to say, are in that VHS.
I'm pretty sure. Yeah. So I used to watch this thing so much that I remember it scaring me so much because of these unmen that I actually would have nightmares about it, and I still would watch it. Because I thought this Swamp Thing was so fucking cool.
Yeah.
And this here, when I was reading this and I just would see this, it would bring moments of nostalgia, being like, remembering that, being like, that's how he looked like in that cartoon. Yeah. Which makes me think also, that TV show, that's what they're going to do, because like they did for that cartoon, but also it was during that time.
Sure.
So. But during like that cartoon was, we'll say now that I can reflect on it, cheesy compared to this. Very much so. Like, and also this is like very mature, and that was probably the start I feel like the people nowadays, Scott Snyder, when he wrote his run, maybe part of it being like, he was a superhero in that cartoon. Like, he can do that too.
Yeah.
And that's kind of where that stems from. But I just love that look of him. And what we talked about before, like how there's a part where the other character covers his genitals. This one here is just all swamp.
Yeah.
And like even his face, that's not human. That nose and everything like that, he's just like, this is what I am. And
but he does have a bush in the junk area.
Well, in this area, he has something over his ass. So I think it's just it's a movement.
Well, I'm just saying it's not even by probably choice going, I got to cover up my junk. It's just that's where the stuff grew. I'm just saying there really is a greenish area that's kind of just in that area where his pants would be.
This is kind of a side note, but Nancy Collins wrote a huge run of Swamp Thing. I want to say it was like almost 30 issues. But her and Stephen Bissett are pals, and they in the I want to say like the mid 90s, maybe a little later, they met up in New York City at a writing convention, and Nancy Collins wanted to pick Bissett's brain about a concept she wanted to introduce into her Swamp Thing series, and it was called The Secret Sex Life of Plant Monsters, I think it was called. And so when they were meeting, Bissett was sketching on yellow line paper, and I have the sketch that he drew during that meeting. And it is Swamp Thing, very similar to what we see in these pages. Full body, it's done with a ballpoint pen, and there's a gigantic penis on him. And on the sketch it says The Secret, whatever. And Nancy sent it to me like this is probably a few years ago, but she's like, thought you might be interested in this.
Holy
shit.
So we cut to
Was it a tree?
No, it's warty and gross. They're probably tubers.
There you go.
Tubulars.
Maybe that's what Floron Man. God, I can't do it. Fluoride Man. Can't. What is it?
Floronic.
Floronic Man.
You can say Woodrew.
There you go. I'll say Woodrew.
Chloronic Man, and the next scene is killing a bunch of people, and he goes, "Where there was no noise, where there no screaming meat, for I regret an answer of the forest I." And then all of a sudden you hear Woodrow, and you cut to Swamp Thing, which, by the way, if anything's going to be chills reading comics, is Swamp Thing popping up and saying this name, and then he goes, "No more."
Yeah.
And that's where the issue ends. And believe me, I couldn't swipe faster to be like, all right, let's fuck
Battle Royale.
So, but before we could jump to the next issue, there are some amazing little things in this issue. So, Woodrow has eaten the sweet potato, the tuber. He's harnessed these powers from the green. He's more of a plant monster more than ever. And so, Woodrow goes into LaCroix, Louisiana, this really small, sleepy town, and he grows roots, and he crushes houses, and he crushes churches, and he decimates a small town. He orders everybody to go into their houses. He then makes all of the plants in everyone's houses emit more oxygen than normal. And then all of the houses explode and everyone dies.
He has that kid tape.
Yeah, and he forces a news kid with a camera to record the entire thing. And then he forces the kid to go to the neighboring town so they can broadcast it. Yeah. And everyone who sees the footage is just like they're shell shocked. And the sheriff that hears the story and watches the news feed, he immediately goes home and he starts putting poison all over his lawn. He starts cutting down trees because he's terrified of the plants. It's a terror. The way that book ends is terrifying.
Yeah, there's like a lot of terror, and then when Swamp Thing shows up, it's Moen being like, okay, he's going to put a stop to this. At least we hope so.
There's this one panel that is one of my favorites, and it completely kind of takes you out of the, you know what? Nope, it's in the next issue. Never mind. We're going to get to that.
So next issue we get on the cover says, "Enter the Justice League of America." So now I wanted to ask you, actually, because when you see them in this issue, this JLA, they really don't do much. They're more in there just to be like, hey, you guys, what are we going to do? And then really don't do anything. Was this, and I'm not sure if you know, is this DC being like, we got to get more people to read this book, let's put Justice League in it real quick? Or is it an Alan Moore extra choice?
I'm going to guess that Alan Moore wanted to use as many superheroes as possible. And the reason why, and I'm just guessing, but I think the reason why Justice League did not directly interact with Swamp Thing in this book is probably because DC didn't want them to, because who knows what can of worms that would open. That's my guess. But, I've heard from a number of writers who've worked on Swamp Thing. They've wanted to add as many characters. Millar wanted to add Batman and all these other people, and they had to use like off characters to make up for that. So I don't know. That's my guess.
So in this issue, enter the JLA. We cut to space, and believe me, after that way the last one ended, we cut to space. I was a little disappointed. I was like,
Your heart drops, and you're like, oh.
I was like, space? What's going on here? Because I wanted to get to this. This pumped me up so much, this ending, that I actually went past this cover. I really didn't look at it. And then it cut to space. So I was like, what the heck? And then the next page, you kind of see like the news footage of what's going on. And then it cuts to the Justice League. And I think maybe if I'm going to say out of this whole series, if anything is the weak point, it's these scenes.
Yeah.
It just feels so like... not what we've been seeing, and it just feels. That's why I thought maybe they were like, "Hey, put them in because it feels so like unnecessary."
It feels like someone stepped on the brakes hard.
Go back one page, Marvin. Who's this girl with the thing on her head? Do you know who that is?
It's not Raven, is it?
No, they talk about Raven later.
Oh, I've looked that up before. Crap, I can't remember.
Because I was asking Garrett who it was. I don't know who this character is.
I'll find out here in just a second.
It bugs me.
Flash is also in the background here. I'm surprised he didn't bring up Kakapupu.
Gosh.
So the next page we cut to, it actually is the fight or the standoff. A terrible silence, a hush before the earthquake. What a great way to say that. And a hush before the earthquake, not before the storm, which is what most people would say, but before the earthquake, which makes more sense because like he's part of the earth. Mm-hmm. I stood in this page is great, by the way.
Yeah, you see all the dead bodies kind of like laying throughout in there. Part of the green.
I always have the title of Swamp Thing is always like wispy or swampy or whatever place it is. I love that it's not just a title; it's part of the world.
They're saying it's so. I have a real problem with Comic Vine, but that's a different time. They're saying it's Zatanna, but I do not think that's Zatanna.
No way.
Because when you look at her on the cover,
she's got like a.
That is absolutely no costume that she's ever worn before. No. She looks like she has a rooster's comb on her head.
I was gonna say
it's a skeleton of some sort.
Yeah.
Yeah, they must have gotten real C-list for that. I was like, we need to have at least 5.
Yeah.
Check the encyclopedias.
Quick.
So we get this standoff where Swamp Thing's like, "What are you doing?" And Woodrow's like, "Oh, how did you come back? You were like in peace, being you were done with. You figured out you weren't Alec. You went on to the great beyond. Why did you come back?" And he goes, "Oh, it must be because you know that I'm doing this. You want to join me."
Yeah.
And he goes, "Here, you should sacrifice, kill her." And he's like, "No, I'm not gonna kill her."
But the great thing is the comedic timing is friggin' amazing. This is one of my favorite panels of the whole book. And for people at home who can't see it, there's a single panel where Floronic Man is just a bumbling fool, and he's like, "Oh, you're here, and oh, we're gonna kill everyone together, and we're on the same side." And there's one panel where Swamp Thing's arm is fully extended, and Woodrow is just flying off panel, and it's like something out of like a not a Three Stooges thing, but he just completely dismisses this bad guy by like one single punch.
I thought of like Batman slapping Robin.
Yeah.
That kind of image.
So dismissive.
Yeah, just like get out of here.
Oh, by the way, I have confirmed that it is Zatanna. She used to have this costume and the red things on her head.
Oh.
In the world?
But what's the... Oh, that's not a cloak she's wearing. That's her hair.
Yeah.
I thought she was wearing a hood and a cloak.
That's like a brooch or something.
It's her 80s costume.
Huh.
No, it's horrible.
That's so funny. Look how much bigger it is on...
Oh, yeah. This thing is really small.
Well, it almost looks like she's wearing a widow's like mask. That's what it looked like.
Yeah, it totally does.
And I've never seen Zatanna need to be comforted before.
No.
I was like, what?
She should be like, yay!
Yeah. She's like, dude, you're wearing a ring, Green Lantern.
Right.
I come from magic stock.
So Swamp Thing gives a backhand to the old Woodrow. He says, "Spat, get out of here." Saves the lady, and then great little panel here with his face all full of sweat and water, sweat, something like that. Something's dripping from his face, and he says, "Just this traitor."
Yeah.
And then from behind Swamp Thing, here comes and stabs him in the back. And here's that fight. And God, the art during this issue is fantastic.
Yeah.
The way they're using their powers, the way that the coloring is in these panels. Which, by the way, is the strongest part of this art, I believe, is not only the panel work but the coloring. Mm-hmm. And I kept stopping and just looking at the coloring and like the mix of like red background in this town that he's taking over to like show you the red is taking over this, and like the green and blues for Swamp Thing and like the yellows. It just is so perfect and so great. And when we have those horror scenes, most of them is like that. The great thing about horror, and sometimes people don't understand, is like the shadow work and like having stuff, what you're seeing and what you're not seeing is part of horror. And in the issues prior to this, that was also a great part, like especially that anatomy issue, like the lighting in that issue was fantastic. Mm-hmm. So we have this fight scene, right? And it's not like today, where especially in Scott's run, those fights were like, Michael Bay type fights. This is instead like, look at this. I'm not a man, neither are you. In fact, you're not anything. There's no hope at all. Like, so Swamp Thing's looks like it's all gone for Swamp Thing, and then we cut to Justice League. I didn't like any of these Justice League.
Honestly, when you were talking about how great the art is, Darren, then he and I got to that page like, until you get the JL, and you're like, oh, that's garbage.
Well, and unfortunately, the digital reprints don't do it justice.
That's what John. John was showing us before we compared his issues to what we have digitally. The colors are different, and it looks way better and more like there's more texture in the comic.
Yeah. Can you show us the issue one?
Absolutely.
Because we're looking. I'll admit, when I look at these. The JL, I'm like, God, you guys you look horrible.
Yeah.
Other than the one good thing about the JL is the yellow S on Superman's cape.
And it's filled in, even though on the cover it's not.
Yeah, so
yeah, look at that. I do have to laugh that, Woodrow gets...
It is better.
Woodrow gets meta in this issue, and he's like, oh, a chainsaw, kind of like the things that you kill plants with.
Oh, yeah, what the heck?
And you use in your horror satires.
But what's terrifying is when Woodrow kills... So there's a townsperson who runs and gets his chainsaw, and he's going to kill Woodrow. Yeah. And Woodrow dispenses of this guy extremely quickly. He takes the chainsaw, and he turns to Abby, and he says something along the lines of like, something, Miss Cable, timber. And it's like, holy shit, he's going to cut her to pieces with a chainsaw.
And he does that thing that... what's the... Texas Chainsaw guy's name? Leatherface.
Yeah.
He does that little dance where he's got the little chainsaw pose.
When they mentioned, like, he says your culture has made this like a horror trope, basically, and he's like, so let me use it in that way that you understand. Which also leads back to like another moment where it's like, oh, like it's kind of like a nod to horror, being like, hey, we had the car scene and the people at Lover's Peak or whatever they call it, and now here, Texas Chainsaw Massacre. You're right. This art in the issue is way better. Yeah. And you know what? And even though I was just praising a second ago the coloring and stuff like that and the digital, it shows you how great it is that even when it gets messed up a little bit, it still works. But these colors are way better in here.
Yeah. Going back to what you're saying about like these horror tropes and stuff. Moore is able to take these very simple age-old concepts and reuse them in these Swamp Thing books. For instance, like what's great about this issue is so Jason Woodrue, he sets out to find the ultimate power within the green and within the earth, and he gets it, and he cannot harness it, and he cannot use it. He uses it for evil and this and that. So, watch out for what you look, or excuse me, what is it?
What you wish for.
Yeah.
Be careful what you wish for.
There you go. Be careful what you wish for. And it's kind of like, Swamp Thing, everything he wishes for, he can never get. Yeah. So it's like this very nice dynamic, and Swamp Thing is able to like talk Woodrow off a ledge, and he kind of succumbs, and Woodrow eventually loses connection to the green, because Swamp Thing basically takes it. And there's that really wonderful panel.
But doesn't Swamp Thing tell him that you've insulted the green by all this garbage that you're doing? You're using it for the wrong reasons.
And there's this beautiful panel where everything just fades out around Woodrow, and he's just left saying, please, it's all shrinking. It's going away. I can't feel the trees anymore. And it's like, oh my God, this, and I was, we were chatting, before we started recording, but, what's beautiful is, Woodrow goes from being a human into the ultimate plant monster. And then at the end, he loses his plant powers, and he can't be the plant monster he wants to be. Well, now he can't go back and be human either, and so he's just this depressing, sad sack who he tries to spray on his human face again, and
he looks like a fucking goblin.
It's terrifying. Yeah,
you I think it was maybe before the show, maybe it was on the show. You talked about like when someone sees color for a blind person who saw color. This is the opposite.
Yeah.
He has seen color, and it's his vision's getting taken away. It's like that's scary.
Yeah.
I mean, I realize he's terrified.
Yeah.
And during the fight, you actually get to watch the crazy chainsaw shit. Swamp Thing just grabs his arm, and I mean, it's not like he breaks his arm by just squeezing.
Yeah.
It's like, holy shit,
Yeah.
dude. I'm terrified for him.
Yeah.
Losing this stuff. It's like, God, dude, you're gonna be so.
And that's why I think that to a lot of people, it'll look like just a little hokey when Superman takes his cape off and he puts it around Woodrew's shoulders. But when reading this book, if you really tap into the crazy turmoil that Jason Woodrew's going through and like his identity crises and trying to figure out who the hell he is, like it's such a sweet gesture that when the JLA shows up and they see Woodrew as this mess of a human being, they're so appalled by what he looks like and what he is. You can't help to just be like, here,
let's make you feel better.
Yeah, are you cold? Maybe you need a hug. Like, they know he's not going to fight. He's like, what do you do? And that's why you just see that Arkham with a question mark, because it's just like, where the hell do we take this thing?
Yeah, right.
I didn't think about it that way. And the way I read it the first time, I was like, oh, they're almost making fun of him. It's not fun of him that they're making it. It's they are kind of at a loss.
He's so pathetic.
He's lost everything. He has no fight of any kind, no motivation. He's just like, I'm a freak.
Yeah. And could you imagine being the JLA? You get like, they didn't get called, but they were they saw the videotape of the carnage that Woodrew was doing and all this. They leave space, get down to Louisiana of all places. They don't find any fight. They just find this pathetic plant human being.
Yeah.
And then they're like, oh, God.
Like, what did we come down for?
We could have just said one.
By the way, in this issue, I wanted to mention, I'm looking at it here. If somebody has a time machine, I got to go back in time. Build bodybuilding course, $8.
Ooh. Dang, an ad?
100 bags for comics, $5.95. Or excuse me, $5.25.
Great panel.
Oh, yeah.
$5.25 for 100 bags. You want to go back in time, Alex? Get 100 bags?
Of course.
$5.25?
I'd do that. I'd do that right now.
So the coloring in that book is way different than digital, which brings me to ask, in trade format, what coloring do we get?
It's pretty similar to that.
The digital?
Yeah, unfortunately, the trades didn't do all that hot. So I brought four trade paperbacks from throughout the years. This is the very first edition, and then I have 3 others from throughout the years. And you can see it's extremely simple coloring. Tatiana Wood, Wally Wood's wife and legendary comic artist, she did all the coloring for these. And you can see the trades are just so simple, and it just doesn't have like the minutia and the hand-painted quality that the single issues have. I mean, look how...
It's very saturated.
It's so saturated.
Yeah. Wowzer.
That's one of my favorite scenes, actually. We're going to get to that a little later.
Yeah.
Kind of disappoints me. You got to go find the issues then.
But see, now when I look at this one, actually these look almost a little bit more vibrant than even the. I mean, I'll admit the first one that come out, it does look kind of bland. But I'm thinking I got the updated release from Saga the Swamp Thing, and it looks more like what your guys' online one looks like. More
Well, it's
a little
the same
bit.
thing. It's just a digital upload of your.
Well, I know. I'm just saying that mine. Well, then yeah, it will look like yours, but it's more vibrant than even what his original book looked like. Not the issues.
Yeah, see, this is a little...
Oh, that
Actually,
that still looks better. Than
Yeah, even like the inking in that one looks way better than this, which makes me think. And now you were telling us before the podcast started that the reason why is because they didn't scan them originally, and like
Yeah, so a lot of the times they have to, like nowadays, rescan the originals, re-ink, recolor, and stuff like that.
So is there no chance ever that there would be a trade with accurate coloring and inking and everything?
I don't think there will be, because you'd have to hire someone to repaint it. Like that would cost a ton of money. That's what's great about these trades is they can make a ton of money off just reprinting stuff.
Yeah.
If they had to put that much time and effort in, like, you might as well just.
You would have to wait for them to make some sort of version that's like an absolute, being like, we took our time and this is really like the pinnacle version of this.
Yeah.
Which, I mean, at this point, I think we can agree Swamp Thing is not a huge character, so they're not going to invest in being like making absolute of Swamp Thing.
Yeah.
Unless, and this is where you guys come in, that TV show's a huge hit, and they started doing more things with Swamp Thing. That Justice League Dark Book's huge, and whatever they decide to do with him movie-wise, like, then they'll start doing stuff with it. But at this point, yeah, I guess we have to look at these.
Yeah, it still blows my mind that they've not made the Alan Moore omnibus like collection of Swamp Thing. It's all just broken in trades. I find that bizarre.
Yeah, I mean, and DC is really good about that. And so it's weird that they wouldn't do that. So at the end here, and we have Swamp Thing after he's taking care of action or taking care of business. Excuse me, and he goes. What we said, almost dawn, a bird speaks, barely awake. Another answers soon. All the birds are talking, telling each other their dreams. What? See, once again, I guess I got chills again. It's just like poetry, this thing. Why? Why did I ever leave this place? I want to walk here forever. I want to struggle with the alligators turning over and over in the mud. I want to be alive and grow and rise up and meet the sun. And then we get that great panel, and it's just like, what a great way to end this arc, and it's just like the perfect. You know what? I would say this arc here, besides the Justice League part, and actually they do serve a purpose, like you said at the end, to be like they are used to being like this police force, being like we are the ones who stop things, and they feel so helpless when Green Arrow's like, who takes care of this city? Like we don't know. Like we're all in Gotham, Metropolis, and Star City, all these places, and who takes care of Louisiana? And then at the end, when they finally do show up, and it's like, oh, like. They see the horrors of what's going on down here and seeing the result of it in this jelly man. And they're like, then they feel like, oh, let's be sympathetic and take him in. So it does serve a purpose. I just feel like it's kind of weird. But anyway.
Sorry, what's weird too is Swamp, the only person in that Justice League group within this book who has encountered Swamp Thing prior was Superman. So the fact that Superman didn't speak up like, oh, I know a dude in the swamp is kind of funny. But
wasn't there all kinds of continuity errors like that in the past?
For sure. But I also
like, I just met you for the first time.
And also to be fair, that appearance with Superman is with Solomon Grundy, and it's like an old DC Presents. I want to say from like 78 or something like that, and it's just a hokey story. It's goofy as hell.
The one thing that we talked about earlier, and I said I'd bring it up, is that when Floronic Man goes insane, I think and it's not legitimate at all. I'm thinking that Swamp Thing can handle it because he doesn't actually have a brain to overload. He literally is the Green. Well, so everything just kind of feeds into him. He just absorbs it as kind of like what you talked about. A god would just absorb the prayers to him. He just takes in everything. It's like, oh, okay. What's important is what I focus on. Yeah. So it's not like he's hearing all these things. He's just there.
So here we go. That's into that arc. We start with the new arc. Same team still on board. Issue 25 and didn't come out. So that's a weird thing with comics also. But they also have a date on them, but the date's not accurate. That's the date they would used to pull them from newsstands. Which would be how long? A month, 2 months afterwards, right?
I think it's usually a month after. Yeah, because when I look at books that came out in February, it's always like March or April.
So this book came out in May 1984. Yeah. So just past the anniversary here a couple months ago. We start here with a person that we don't know, but we find out later who he is. But it has some cool hair, like I was talking about at the beginning. Red with a white stripe, down the middle. Garrett, this part here you enjoyed, right? The Ouija board?
No, that's the thing that, I did like this is like, there's always that, myth that Ouija boards are real. Maybe they are. Demons, if you're listening. But, the thought of like inviting anything horrible in usually comes when you have access to talking to these demons, hence a Ouija board. And Jason Blood, is that we're saving that? I don't know. Basically, is he bought it at a auction, and he's using it to. I don't even know what his game plan is.
I thought he bought the Ouija board that was used to summon this thing, right?
Mm-hmm. Oh, okay. So he found the source. Of the evil.
He's going to the dead people's auction estate, and he wants to get the Ouija board that they used.
He's come to contain the problem.
Little self-plug. Pay attention to next week's episode about supernatural stuff that we talked about. Maybe we'll use a Ouija board. You don't know.
Might not be here.
So we get the title page here. There was an hour ago and 40 miles away, and it just says Swamp Thing, the sleep of reason. He's in the water now, floating around some algae. I didn't notice that before. It says Swamp Thing, created by Len and Bernie, but it's all like part of the tree. It's pretty cool. So yeah, we get this cool scene. Once again, I don't even know, like, now, John, you may be gun shy to be like, praise his art, because for me it was fantastic reading it, but now that you should actually show me the thing, I'm like, that's way better.
Well, let's say John showed us the pitch. That's
way better.
Say,
You're right, though. It looks
colors.
more washed out, but like I said, I feel like the intent, I can see the intent, right? And I can see like what they were trying to do in these digital versions. But to see yours is to realize what actually they meant to do. So it is great, like, reading this, because it's the composition still there, the intention of the color. It's just sad that it's not actually what is in those books. But we'll move on from that. We won't bring it up anymore. We get this kind of this love going on here. Swamp Thing grabbing Abby and let me be your creature from the Black Lagoon. What's going on here?
So finally, Abby and Swamp Thing are able to take a breather, or what they think. So they're what's happening right now is Matt Cable, Abby's husband, he's in this huge slump isn't even the right word. He's been drinking a ton. He's been communicating with all these like paranormal demons, and he's been isolating himself. So Abby has been able to find sanctuary and hanging out with Swamp Thing, this unassuming, he's not human, hanging out with her old friend. And so it starts off where they're kind of like playing around in the water and just kind of hanging out on an afternoon.
Then moves on. Abby's going to get a job taking care of some children here that are at the Elysium. How do you say that? Elysium. All right, like Matt Damon. Law Centers for Autistic Children. She goes there to. Is this an interview, or is she hired at this point?
It kind of does a little bit of both. She's interviewing and then she gets the job.
Oh, okay. So she meets Paul, right? Alex's character.
Paul.
Paul. She says to spell your name. She says A-B-I, or he spells it A-B-I-G-A-G-A-I-L. Spell it. And I'm sorry, what? And then he goes, spell Abigail. Paul really needs to spell Abigail for him. And then she spells it, and he doesn't like it. He's like, no, not good. Which, I mean, he has autism, and he really needs to be spelled right, which later on we learn from that Ouija board. It's because his Monkey King, Garrett, if you don't spell stuff right, he comes out. At least that's what he thought. It's like, hey, you spell stuff wrong, here comes the Monkey King. By the way, speaking of character design, that Monkey King, A+. He's not only... Because when they started talking about this Monkey King, right? I'm like, how scary is a monkey going to be? But he looks pretty freaky to be like, oh yeah, I was
First
scared.
I thought he was like a Yeti.
Yeah, so there's the first time you really get to see him, he just kind of looks like a big Yeti or the Marvel's Wendigo, just a big white furry thing.
Once again, next week's show, listen, we talk about some Monkey Kings. We move back to Abby and Swamp having their moment together. And once again, here we go. After she was gone, he stands and listens to the water, the trees, the insects. Autumn is coming. Autumn and something else, something dark. In the corner of his eyes, a sudden blur of gray moving through the treetops, up and to the right. Up to the right. He turns, focusing. It's gone. He stands and wonders what comes with autumn. And it's just Swamp Thing and a little twinkle in his eye. And the detail on, like, throughout the series, and maybe because you have this consistent team of people, Swamp Thing, once he became Swamp Thing, you say that's way better.
Oh, yeah.
Once you see him become Swamp Thing, it's just like, oh, you know what? Actually, too, that makes way more sense. These like veins, it looks like it's green, and that actually is the bark, roots. Roots. Yeah. That makes way more sense. The actual coloring.
And what's sad is that was to save money. Use as few colors as possible. Okay.
His design is, like I said, once again, A+ spot on, but they never, whenever you see him, they never be like, oh, look, we can take this one easy, right? People have seen him. In this panel, he can not look as detailed, but he always looks like, they always like, no, he looks like this in every single panel. Like, they don't take shortcuts. Yeah. That's what I like.
Yeah.
Here we go. They move on here, and we go back to Jason, right? Jason's trying to find, what's he finding at this point? He's got the Ouija board. He's trying to find.
So he's traveling through town, and so Jason Blood arrives in town, and he is trying to find Abby to warn her about the impending doom of some bad things that are going to happen.
And she goes back home. She finds Matt, and she goes, "I have to go to Baton Rouge. I'll see you later." And he's like, "Hey, gotta spell this out now. Pay attention to me." She's like, "I gotta go." He's like, "All right, take off." And he makes it. Oh, we didn't mention in the past issue we saw that he can manifest this kind of spirit hologram. I don't know what it was.
Yeah,
lady, and dances for him. Into this issue, he makes her dance, but also is like, what do you say? Get on your knees and now get on your knees and apologize.
Yeah.
And it's just like, what the fuck?
He can manifest all these like visions and things, and he really gets into it. Like he tries to like get better at it.
The last panel here. So like, what is that? His only powers? Like that last scene there where he has all this stuff behind him. What is that supposed to be like hinting at? Because he really doesn't get to that point in this book, but he does at one point.
Yeah, and it's kind
powers?
of it's kind of vague whether it's actual powers or if it's just like his delusions, you know. But basically, it's just kind of a representation of like he's messing with the dark arts, and where Abby's like finding salvation and a good, Matt is finding salvation in his own demons and stuff. And we later find out in this trade paperback that those demons lead right back to Anton Arcane.
So we get that creepy scene. Something. Oh, here at the bottom, there's a little thing. Something sniggers as it uncoils from beneath the bed. Something rustles as it clambers down the drapes. Matt Cable is happy in his very personal heaven. So at this point here, we realize not a good dude anymore.
No.
Turning to this evil side, and we go back to Paul. He remembers this Ouija board. Garrett, do you have flashbacks here? Is this where you were like, hey, I remember this?
I don't look at Ouija boards.
He has a flashback of how his parents got killed by this Monkey King. And like I said, this Monkey King, I don't want to see this guy in a zoo. That's all I know. Once again, classic kind of horror. The monster showing up in the house, them trying to get away, and he kills his parents. It's like there's all these like hints to like horror, and like I found it fantastic. I love it so much. And then we once again, do you have actually what this looks like?
I surely do. In fact, I was just looking at it.
Oh, now they're brown in this one. They decided here, let's put the little brown. Let's color out these roots. He remembers his.
They still look better than yours.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
And that's low res.
The inking, the inking looks way better there. He remembers how he was born, basically, we'll say. And that's a great 2-page. Mm-hmm. Fantastic. And this part here, even though we realize that, this is just a plan, in a way is like to show his struggle, like we said, the humanity being like, I remember dying. Mm-hmm. Like, how is this possible that I'm not him? And like, God, it's just so fantastic. And remember that Christmas special we talked about a couple months ago when it came out around Christmas. We talked about it, and there was like some great stuff about that. That actually is probably the thing, the most recent thing that I've read that really ties into like this run a lot, and actually reminds me of like all these questions of like, what am I, and what really does it mean to be human?
Yeah.
Like, just because I am plants, if I feel humanity in me, is that enough? Like, is that enough to be like, I could be Alec? Like, it doesn't matter that I don't have organs or that I'm not actually this person. And like we were talking before, like about that one story, like if you clone something, technically that's not human either, but it has all the parts, it has all the memories, and like it is physically a human, but what you consider human, like it was not created in the same way.
Right.
Is that still human? And who's to say that he's a monster, not a human, or not, person?
Right.
So I find this 2-page spread where he's like struggling with that. I've looked at him; it's fantastic. But the art is great too. The painting. What's happening? We'll go forward. Come back to Jason, and there's some other stuff goes on here. We have some more horror stuff going on. That swordfish, by the way, he was like, "Hey, by the way."
Well, yeah, Jason, this whole issue has been predicting everyone's deaths, or like, John was saying too, one character, what does he say? He's like, oh, I'm going to be sitting in these lawn chairs next year drinking a margarita or a beer or something. And Jason Blood's like, no, you're gonna be in a prison for manslaughter.
Yeah. So this yokel in Louisiana, he's at this auction and Jason Blood's outside with him, and the guy goes, my wife's in there bidding for the lawn chairs. I tell you, next summer I'm gonna do some real relaxing. And Jason Blood interrupts him and says, Mr. Corelli, next summer you'll be in jail for manslaughter. You see, Selena doesn't like lawn chairs. Good day to you, sir.
That is awesome.
Then the guy dies then the guy goes and kills somebody by way of swordfish.
Well, at the beginning of this issue, he's like, you're going to get a swordfish to the chest. He's like a scammy business guy.
Yep. And he gets a swordfish impaled in him right after he hits on Abigail.
Right.
And Abigail kind of turns him down, and then she turns to look at him crossing the street, and he just gets a swordfish stuck in his chest.
Abby's just like, it's my fucking life.
Yeah, it is. That's one thing I kind of like laugh at is like through all the crappy stuff and chaos, Swamp Thing and Abby have the worst luck of any characters. It's just one after another garbage.
Then we have the Monkey King comes back, and Paul cries because he sees him, and he goes to somebody else's room to lick his lips and stare at them, and then we get a nice little painting, which is a reference to it is a painting. The sleeper reasons produce monsters, but it's in Spanish here, and I mean this once again hitting towards that horror. You see that panel there, which I'm sure looks better in the issues once again, but of the outline of the Monkey King with its red eyes, and it's just like, so we had like in the first one we had a monster or the creature was somebody who tried to be like our hero and wasn't. What the thing that he was missing was his humanity, even though he was still human, and he was attacking these people. And we had these these horror tropes because that's what he saw as horror because of all these movies, and he was influenced by them. And then now we have this Monkey King, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
which is like a manifestation of this monster of like this child's fear, and like it really feeds on like that kind of like Nightmare on Elm Street, like, and also like a monster movie, Monkey Shines maybe. And once again, I smiled every time when they like referenced these horror things, and you could tell that this team was like in love, not in love, but well, maybe in a way being like here's what you guys know, and like commenting on like here's a horror thing but we're gonna do our take on it. It was great.
What I like too is this kind of foreshadowing of, we find out that this child is the Monkey King is a manifestation of the kid. And then you look back at what was happening with Matt Cable, and he's not far from that.
Yeah.
He's creating all this crazy stuff that is going to wreak havoc on the people he loves.
The next issue we have here, number 26, we get a raccoon at the beginning. Runs away quickly. Alex, raccoons, they don't like Swamp Thing?
Well, they love Swamp Thing. They clean their food in his water. But when Swamp Thing gets up, you kind of freak out.
And it's Abby and Swamp Thing running throughout the night here. They abide and endure. By the way, also, I love that this opens with a line from Night of the Hunter. If you've ever seen Night of the Hunter, it's one of the greatest movies ever. Like, I know a lot of people oh, that's an old movie, I don't want to watch it. That movie is fantastic. You could tell me that movie was made last year, and I'd be like, yeah, it was. It's fantastic. If you ever want to watch like a horror movie about just a guy, there you go. So Abby and Swamp are running throughout the swamps here. I forget, are they running towards... Is this the part where they're running back to the center?
Yeah, they're running back to the hospital.
They're like, hey...
So this issue kind of plays with flashbacks a little bit and flash forwards throughout the
does.
story for narration and whatnot. Because they even go back to a scene where Matt's upset that, again, Abby's leaving him to go hang out with Swampy. So,
and she officially gets the job in this issue as well. Her first day at Elysium Fields, one of the patients comes running up to her naked.
Runs up to her naked, and we see Alan Moore works at this place too. They help restrain the guy. Once again, though, like, you showed us a panel from this panel here. For anybody wondering, it's the page 166 in the actual book, but this panel here in the actual issue looks fantastic. This here, I can now tell this looks kind of washed out. It looks like, Yeah, so she gets the job, doing some more work with Paul. You see the Monkey King as a doll next to this guy, and you're like, oh, there we go. That's why he's seeing like all this. You ever see that Twilight Zone episode where this kid can make these manifestations, and it's like he likes watching cartoons and stuff like this, so like he makes these horrors from these cartoons because he's so used to it. That's what this guy's powers are. And you know what? They probably stole that from Swamp Thing here because I think it came out afterwards.
Oh, the Twilight Zone movie.
Yeah.
Yeah. The kid's watching. And then he turns around and he doesn't have a mouth. You're like, oh my God.
Swamp Thing breaks through that chain link fence. Alex, you think that's possible? Chain link, isn't that the strongest thing in the world?
No.
Oh, okay. And
I love how he breaks through the chain link fence like it's cobwebs. I'm not sure what the detail work looks like on the digital, but like
he's more green, but
his hand just passes right through.
Oh, yeah,
like
he's fully green on this, and that one is just
Yeah.
tore it apart. Let Abby get through here. I believe you, Paul. And now who's going to believe me? Well, Swamp Thing did. And once again, cut to Abby, don't leave, and all this. And you can tell, like, he's an angry man. Doesn't matter if he has powers or not. Like, and there's a great when Matt is yelling at Abby in the background. It's all red, and like then you cut to Abby looking back at him, and it's all blue. And you can see with his coloring again that it's just telling a story, and even in the coloring, like. Look at this. The red versus blue, both sides, and like, fantastic work. Move on here. We get to Swampy showing up at the center. He finally got there. Abby's in a sweat. She had too much running for Abby. You don't think this guy can make a little swamp boat for her and like center there?
I was actually thinking the same thing. Like, so when they're running to Elysium Fields, I just imagine Swamp Thing thinking like, why do I have to walk with you? I'd be there by now if this wasn't.
I could just show up.
Yeah.
Or if we're talking about Scott Snyder's run, he would have flew.
Yeah.
When do they establish that he can do that?
They've already hinted at it, but more in terms of like him being able to like regenerate and stuff. But they don't play around with him doing big distance travels for probably 6 or 7.
He did a little one when he saw something was wrong with the green. He showed up with his kids.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So he just touched the vine and went through the vine. But I mean, they kind of just showed it as him touching it and then him showing up there. They didn't show him like you said, recreating himself, which is my favorite thing about Swamp Thing. It makes me laugh is like when he shows up like as a little like flower and he's like, "Hey guys," so he's in the center. He's like, "Hey, we got a Monkey King in here," and there's a room.
Hey, we got a Monkey King in here.
Aisle 5, we got a Monkey King killing up. Aisle 5,
Monkey King. I'm here for the Monkey King. I mean, the kid's like, hey, this guy's Abby. This thing's a doll in here. That's what you sent me here for. I thought like you're in a sweat. I could have transported here. He goes, call me back when you got time. No, he shows up and he's like, oh, okay, let's take care of this. And then now they realize like there's all these horrors happening. Somebody is scared of cancer, right? Unfortunately, she hasn't explained what cancer actually was. Michael had his own ideas, and so like it's this weird like monstrosity, and then we get like this. Kind of, it almost looks like Woodrow's back. Is he back? No, it's just somebody who looks like him.
Well, and what's interesting is the Monkey King is feeding off of everyone's fears.
Yeah.
So when Abby looks at it, it's different than what Alec sees.
Garrett, is there another character that feeds off somebody's fears? Who am I thinking? Oh, I'm thinking of the Man Thing. We'll talk about him later.
By the way, in this panel, this would be page 18 in the actual comic. This is one of the most amazing expressions.
Oh,
where Abby is just screaming.
Oh,
you don't see like that like ultimate lack of mouth structure in screaming. Now it's much more graceful. Abby looks absolutely like she's screaming and crying all at the same time.
It's kind of like her jaw broke from screaming so loud.
Swamp Thing is too. The noise is unbearable. Alec is shouting, trying to tell me something. Doesn't he realize we're too late? There isn't a hope. And then here we go. Here's the demon, Etrigan himself, his rhyming self. The toys are of the.
Those are tubers.
What's up?
Oh, Alex pointed out that he has teeth in that same panel that Abby's screaming.
It's not a tuba.
It's not a tuba. Or tuber.
The toys are about the nursery, a set for idiot chaos to arrange them at whim. He drools and ruins lives. His chin is wet and old or young. So here we go. We got the demon. Oh, he just rips off through that window. By the way, you were showing us on, if you go to rootsofsomething.com, your article, right? That Etrigan, he hates windows.
Yeah. He has a total lack of respect for architectural details.
Can you imagine? Like, I mean, they must love him though at these window repair shops. He's like, "Hey, Astrogen's in town, buddy. You get that bonus money."
Here's my question: do you guys think Etrigan's related to the Kool-Aid guy?
Oh, there you go.
Always busting shit in.
We both
Well, they probably had to have like who destroys windows, who destroys walls.
Well, they team
We
up.
can't have the same person do the same, or two different people do the same thing.
Well, maybe Etrigan, since he's a demon, he's practiced going through church windows.
Oh, there you go.
And so
Although-
now,
Do you think he prefers stained glass or a double pane window?
I think he thinks double pane is he sees obstacles right fucking through it.
Oh, he gets two panes.
Yeah, right.
Actually, I'm thinking supernaturally wise, he probably maybe can't enter a building through a door without being invited. So he's got to break through the windows because there's no, as long as there's no salt, he can come through it.
That's not true, but I appreciate your effort.
I just picture F apostrophe, yeah, like fuck yeah. Going through windows.
Surprise, motherfucker.
Oh, wait.
Do you think maybe that these window companies are missing out that they're not hiring him because when they go to replace windows, he can just rip that shit out?
That's a good
And like,
call.
okay, we're done now. I mean, we can put that in for you if you wanted. Like, quit waiting for him to show up and hire this guy.
Not just the windows. He's breaking up some of that brickwork
Yeah,
and everything.
It's an,
sounds
it's
like
an aggressive
contractor
removal.
almost.
It sounds
So
like
didn't he break the roof off this building?
Yeah, he ripped it out. Yeah.
it sounds like you could pay this guy in Ouija boards. Like, he shows up.
Demon demo would be great.
We see Swamp Thing, Abby, the kids, and this Monkey King turn around and say, "What's going on right here? Feast, Jack and Ape. Eat hearty while you can. Upon your neck, the breath of estrogen. It begins with death. It begins with blood. I guess it'll probably end the same way." And then we cut to Maddie, right? Drinking his life away and grabbing those car keys.
Maddie.
Bad idea.
Maddie makes the best choices. Oh, he's watching Wild Kingdom, by the way, about our insect allies. That's on the background. That old CRT TV. That, you know what? I was just reading that ad in there about the. But also, there's something. It's not really dated. This comic now reading through it, like this could be today, except for like this small little details. But for the most part, it doesn't really feel that dated.
What's this box on the back of the TV?
He cut to, he doesn't get that far, and he turns a corner. Adios. He goes up in flames, and that's how the issue ends. Maddie can take a corner. The night can make more brave, but not more sober. Do you think that's a little PSA? Don't drink and drive? Like that could have ended with a picture of Mr. T being like, "Hey, by the way,"
I'm going to say no because at this time, people were still really big into drinking and driving.
especially in Burma and Louisiana, like that's like
Probably didn't have seatbelts
so
on.
it's-
that's a rite of passage.
It's not Burma. That's Burma Shave. That's the billboard.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Burma Shave is just an advertisement.
Why didn't he go through? He missed the ad, so they don't have to just put that up. He
He's
ran
probably
into
too
a
busy
tree.
looking at it. Oh, look at
What
that.
need
Should have
to
shaved. Oh!
He ran into a tree. Is that Swamp Thing murder then?
Ooh, that's a good
Technically,
call.
he kills him.
He's an accomplice for
Yeah,
sure.
he's trying to.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, if I was Maddie, I'd be like, "Hey, you could have saved me here.
You might have just opened up a can of worms.
Like, you're trying to kill me, and that's why." He lets Arcane come in and says, "Let's fuck this guy up."
Yeah.
He tried to kill me one time. That tree came out of nowhere.
And what if Abby holds resentment? What if she's like, "Hey, you're Swamp Thing. You're the one who drove the nail in my husband's coffin."
Yeah.
He wouldn't have been.
What's that coffin made of? Wood.
Wood.
It's made of,
Dun, dun, dun.
it's made of Swamp Thing.
Those are nails. Those are wood pegs. Dun, dun, dun.
Has anything ever been done with that? Like where Swamp Thing, he can feel everything connected to the green, but these bodies, like in the coffin, that is part of it's essentially dead parts of him housing dead parts of the red. And, like it's like this weird kind of thing being like, you kill me to put your dead in. And it's, you know what? We'll look into it.
Yeah. Well, I can tell you that's not been explored, but it would be amazing if it was.
I like it when tomorrow grabs his phone to
Yeah,
look it up.
yeah.
I can already tell
Yeah,
it
yeah,
hasn't
yeah.
happened.
That's like when you ask if there's ever been a Hellboy crossover. Immediately, no.
Well, that's why I thought instead of wasting my time, I thought I'll put it on our chat and just have you answer so I don't have to look it up.
But he has had many encounters with dealing with the earthly flesh and stuff like that. But
Well, has Mike Mignola ever drawn Swamp Thing?
I want to say yes.
Because then maybe you saw something
So
with
this-
him drawing Swamp Thing.
Yeah,
You're
I'm
like,
pretty
oh,
sure he
maybe.
did. He did a pinup page in one of the comics. I don't believe it was a cover though. I'll pull it up for you actually.
Ooh, see?
Yeah, Abby's
Boom.
with him.
Who needs you, Googly?
We cut to the issue number 27. First page is the glass breaking, and the glass turns into the panels. Great work.
Showed up in the late 90s.
Oh, yeah, baby.
And Arcane's.
Look at that mullet,
Oh,
though.
hell yeah. That's
Business
awesome.
in the front, party
Yeah,
in
that's
the
pretty
back.
Yeah, and you guys, the reason why, so this was around the time that Nancy Collins and Scott Eaton were working on the Swamp Thing comic. The reason why Swamp Thing has dreadlocks is because Nancy was writing the series at the time, and she was living in New York, and she was at a grocery store, and in front of her, she saw a man, and she thought, oh, that guy has a hot body, and he had really long dreadlocks, tight pants, and he turned around, it was Lenny Kravitz. So the reason why Swamp Thing has dreadlocks is Lenny Kravitz.
Hell yeah.
Doesn't he have? He has Alan Moore here in the new Justice League Dark, right?
Well, here's the thing. Alan Moore has never had dreadlocks. So everyone, like, every time I post something about the new book, everyone's like, that's Alan Moore. And it's like, get a picture of Alan Moore. He's fat. He has long hair. He looks nothing like that. That is hippie Swamp Thing. Like, I understand that someone said he was inspired by Alan Moore, but it's such a far-flung look.
We get a crazy looking Monkey King here getting thrown by estrogen while he laughs.
Did you say estrogen?
I think so.
He said estrogen twice.
Hey, it's hot in here, baby.
Estrogen the demon.
By demons driven, and we get a nice fight here where he's beating him up. And by the way, look at this guy just stretching out his face. He does not care. Just like those windows, he kills monkeys too. Monkeys and windows, that's his business. M&W.
Look at
That's
And then Swamp Thing. So the Monkey King in
estrogen.
Estrogen are fighting, and Monkey King slams his face into the ground. He's holding him down, and he's like laughing in this panel, which actually is pretty hilarious. And then Swamp Thing comes over and just fucking like punches him into the wall, and he goes, "Run for the swamp, Abby," and throws this guy through the fucking wall, and then they start fighting outside. And he's like, 3 monsters, run. Abby, and then she runs off. And then we cut to Maddie again. Here we go. Car's flipped over. He's pretty messed up. I don't think he's getting out of this thing. And a fly shows up. Now, this fly, you said, has significant value.
Yeah, the fly, which I encourage you to read the next trade, but the fly is actually Anton Arcane. So yet again, that bastard is rearing his ugly head back from the dead again. Mind you, he was only gone for what, 6-7 issues. Like, the dude just keeps coming back. It's insane.
He comes back in
months though.
He's in Scott's run for a while. He's in Scott's run for a while, and something happens where he's the avatar of something. I don't want to spoil this part, and it moves on to somebody else, right? And then that person goes missing. Where's she been? John?
Hellblazer started to put those pieces together in the series that's happening now, and they abandoned it as soon as they brought it up. They abandoned it, and quite literally, they abandoned Swamp Thing's carcass in the middle of a field, and he's just like rotting away, looking up, and he's like, "You're gonna find her?" And Constantine's like, "Sure are," and then they just abandoned the plot thread.
Oh my gosh!
And that was like 2 years ago.
You know something I noticed? Usually, when artists draw crying scenes, it's just tears. And throughout this whole book, when somebody cries, they also leak stuff out their nose, mucus runs, which is more realistic.
It's a real cry.
Like that's full on
the
cry.
best tasting snot. Right
I'm just
there.
saying, nobody in this book like just cries a little bit. They full on cry, which I would imagine. I mean,
Well,
you got a
Abby's just
demon
got,
coming at you.
Abby's
You
only
got
got a tear in that corner shot.
oh, snot's coming.
Well, and it's like every single comic book nowadays, whenever someone's mouth is open and they're yelling, somehow there's the connective spit. That, like, never happens. Yeah.
I've got chewing gum in my mouth and it's clear.
Yeah.
DC Universe is full of liquid. That's what's happening.
It's full of something.
This fight continues. We see the demon does one of these little backhand punches through Abby, throws a tree, and says, "Fear not, for pain is short and death is long. Through what dreams follow, legends vary. They also suffer. Those that do not wrong, your death is small. But is it necessary?" And he gets interrupted. Swamp Thing goes, "Here we go. Here's that tree you just knocked out." Right to his face. And looks like he kind of dislocates his jaw a little bit.
Yeah.
Right? And he takes off. we get Swamp Thing. Oh, Swamp Thing's arm gets cut off, and he just puts that bad boy back on and punches him with that same arm.
That's so. What's great about that is in series 1 with Len Wein and Bernie Wrightson, they explore that territory of Swamp Thing loses an appendage. The appendage gets lost, and it actually turns into another swamp creature. But you don't get to see Swamp Thing harness the powers like this. It is almost comical. Etrigan with one swipe cuts off Swamp Thing's arm. Swamp Thing picks it up, attaches it back to his shoulder, and then with that arm, then punches Etrigan. It's absolutely amazing timing, and it's great.
Yeah, okay. We're almost done with this issue here. So Monkey King in the tree here, and he's slobbering down, right? Talking about liquid. There we go. More slobber. Then we cut back to Maddie, and this is the part where the fly starts talking to him. Well, you have to open your mouth as wide as it will go. And yo, yes, that's splendid. That's just right. Now this next bit will be the worst. There, that wasn't so bad, was it? For my side of the bargain, whatever you're afraid of. That's what it looks like. And he goes through a little transformation here. I don't know. This is the Monkey King. No, excuse me. The Monkey King, and she sees... Is this Maddie that Monkey King turns into? Or who's this supposed to be?
Okay, so Monkey King is preying on Abby's emotions, and he turns into Matt Cable.
And then, at that point, Polly says, no, leave her alone. And you kill... And this is when he finally is like, no. Enough is enough. I realize I have control over you. You don't have control over me. He turns them smaller to a point where he's a nice little treat. And here we go. Pop him in the demon, and demon runs away. And he tells her something. He goes, the answer, madame, is for you to know. I've said too much. My job is done. I go. And she's like, wait a second. What do you mean? And Swamp Thing shows up.
A jig of what?
Say a who?
And Swamp Thing's like, are you okay? She's like, I gotta go catch this demon. He said something to me.
He told me secrets.
And then he goes, okay, I'll take care of this Polly. Polly's like, hey, you scared? He goes, no, not anymore. Can I go home, please? And Swamp Thing smiles. That's sliced in a moment where he's like, were you scared? He goes, yeah, I saw fire once I knew someone who died by fire. And were you afraid? He goes, yes, a little bit. He goes, that's good. It makes me feel a little better. I mean, even if monsters can get scared sometimes, then it isn't so bad, is it? And he goes, no, this isn't so bad. Which reminds me of, you go once again, that Christmas special was kind of, this kind of here might be an inspiration for him to be like, oh, let me do this more. Because that actually was what Tom King's story was him and a kid. And I think there's even a part where he asks the kid, like, are you afraid of me? And stuff like that. So I think it is kind of an homage to this little moment here. Which is great. Once again,
one panel that cracks me up and it kind of takes me out of the moment every time I read this is there's one panel where Swamp Thing is this child is given to Swamp Thing, and Swamp Thing is responsible for taking him home. And you've never seen two people like fish out of water than Swamp Thing and this little kid, and. Yeah, and so Swamp Thing's holding this kid's hand, and neither one of them look happy. Like, Swamp Thing does not want to babysit, and this kid doesn't want to be hanging out with a vegetable monster.
That kid's like, why are you touching me? And Swamp Thing's like, well, there we go. I hope this pays more than $9.95.
You know what? I didn't notice that before, but you're at the kids. I was just like, what do I do?
This guy's taking me home? Are you shitting me?
I just watched him beat the shit out of a monkey.
Yeah.
So then she asks Jason at that point, when you go back to Jason, he goes, what was he trying to say? And she's like, I don't know. We're two different people. We're not the same person.
Yeah.
He's in me.
Yeah.
Then we cut to Swamp Thing once again. He's tired of this escort service. He brought Abby to the school, and then now he's got to walk this kid back to the school.
Swamp Thing's a gigolo?
He's like, hey, here's your school. He walks in. Along its eastern edge, the sky is aflame. He sulks back to his mud, his ferns and stones. It is unease he feels without a name, and merely autumn gnawing at his bones. The thing of shadow vanishes with the night. Worse horrors still are heralded by light. And then here's Maddie. His car's all fixed up, and he's back to normal. Hey, Abby, I came on after you. I wanted to apologize. I wanted to help. Need a ride? She gets in and rides off into... what we see is a dark, dark night. And that's how it ends. So book 2 picks up from there directly, and we see those loose ends be resolved in book 2. I thought it was a fantastic book. I really did enjoy it more than I remember those first 2 issues. Actually, at this point, because I remember reading them like a long time ago. Even if I'd read those 2 issues, like you were saying, going back to them now at this point and where I am and what I enjoy, it really did sink to me more now than it did before. And I think maybe if you did read this once and you were like, yeah, it was okay, but like I really didn't enjoy it, I think this is something you go back to. And you go back and you see these little things like we were saying. And I think that is a thing with Alan Moore, is that sometimes the first time is not the best, and then you go back and reread it and you see the greatness behind it, and you say, and you like the panel working, and even like I said, the artists were great. But you see, I think Alan Moore works best when you have time to sit down and examine him. And I think when you read something for the first time, you're like, I just want to get through this. And the second time is like, I've gotten through this before. Let me examine this. And I think that second run's when you're going to find these things. And then like, if you're John, the 500 times you're still like, oh, that's pretty cool.
Well, I think what's nice about it too is what the reader brings to the table. I feel like different stages of like maturity levels that the reader is at is going to influence it. Where if I was to read these books when I was younger, it would just be this monster book. But when you're older, you get to understand the nuances of like humanity and the balances of good and evil, looking like evil but being good, and soaking all that stuff in. So I think even like when you get older and reread it, like certain things hit where they didn't used to before and stuff like that.
I got a question in a second here, but let me ask these 2 first. This was my pick, and because that was something that Swamp Thing's been a guy that I've been into for a while. Like I said, that cartoon. And so I'm like, let's get into, and this is the thing that people are always like, if you're going to have any essential like start, it's like this book. What did you guys think overall?
I really enjoyed this book. I am excited to get in book 2. For me, this was kind of a Hellboy-esque book where he's kind of he's a monster, yes, but he's the good guy monster that's actually not necessarily hired out to fight evil, but he feels it's his duty to protect the innocent people from monsters who go bump in the night. And so that was my big thing. It's like, man, I really wish that they really did do a Swamp Thing Hellboy crossover, because holy shit, that book would be awesome. But I'm excited to get into book 2. I'm excited to see what else this character has for me. This was a really great introduction for a character that I don't know a lot about. And to, have John Boylan on, who, essentially knows everything there is to know of the Swamp Thing. It makes it that much more exciting for me to get into this character.
Garrett?
Yeah, I really enjoyed it. Reading it for the first time, I thank John for his Holland Files, because I got to read a lot of behind the scenes on the beginning of this run from that. And so to see those things play out in this book, I definitely want to read more. I think I'm, learning more and more about this character, and it's just an interesting character study because, 2 years ago, I knew Swamp Thing was a big green plant. Now I know so much more, and I want to keep learning more. And that's what's fun when you don't know a character. You can learn more about them. There's so much material, too, and it's nice that we have an expert here with us to fill in all the gray areas.
Speaking of Holland Files, I'm not sure. I guess I haven't seen them there, but they might be around. You had a couple issues at Rainbow.
Yep, yeah, I think there's a few kicking around.
So if you're local Sioux Falls, go to Rainbow Comics and Cards, and they have Holland Files 1 and 2. And go to rootsofswampthing.com and follow them on Twitter at DC World Swampy to make sure that you're in on number 3 and you don't miss out and have to search for that issue. You pre-order that thing when it comes out. John, I wanted to ask. So we have this Alan Moore one, and obviously, if you enjoy this, or you're going to keep going down this road and get book 2, 3. How many are there? 4?
No, there's
6 that I've seen.
I think so.
I saw 9.
Well, they keep expanding upon them. They, but it stops up to RIPGeech because they haven't collected those yet, which is a damn shame.
Oh.
So we have this. So if you enjoyed this, obviously continue Alan Moore's run. But the Swamp Thing has been a guy that multiple now like big name writers have taken a shot at. We have, you said Mark Miller before. Brian K. Vaughan wrote a run. Charles Soule, Scott Snyder. Did Grant Morrison write?
Sure did.
Yeah.
Yep.
So what would you say if you're going to go through and say, hey, here's a few more to pick up? Which one of those runs is worth picking up?
Okay, hit up Nancy Collins for sure. So I think it's Swamp Thing Annual Fudge. I know. I want to say it's 5, but I'm not positive. It might be 6, but it's the title's Lesperdu, Lesperdu, and it is one of the most amazing horror-like stories. If you enjoyed this first trade paperback, Saga of the Swamp Thing, you are going to absolutely love that annual Lesperdu. Again, I don't recall the exact number, but it's an annual. It's big and thick, and it's this horror story that's set in Homa, very similar to this, and it's amazing.
The sad thing is on Hoopla is they only have this one, and they have Scott Snyder up to issue 17, which I don't think it's his whole run, right? It's just part of it.
Yeah.
So I mean, that Scott Snyder run, I did put it down on the show, but it's not that bad. I mean, it's okay. I'm
getting a different bird singing here tonight.
Reflecting on it. Here's the thing, though. If you grew up watching those prequels, you're like, this is pretty good. And then you go back to watch that original trilogy of Star Wars, you're like, hold on a second.
Yeah.
This is better. And then you look back at those prequels. I can't look at them the same light as it.
Yeah. I understand that.
At a time
but I'm just thinking
in my life, I enjoy
past Marvin's like, yeah, that Scott Snyder, amazing. Perfect book. Read it. Now I'm hearing this Marvin. Yeah, someone took a shit on this book.
I'm pretty sure me and John have shit on it before on that Christmas episode.
Yes.
Yeah, so go back and listen to the show and know your history. So is that Brian K. Vaughan run at good at all? Should I invest in that?
Yeah, I think it is. It's wait, no. Yeah, that's the one with Tefe. Yeah, it's amazing.
Yeah. BKV, that's my guy. I got to go check him out.
Yeah, in fact, that is one that I really enjoy revisiting because it did not get the credit it deserves.
What about my true boy, Grant Morrison? How's he doing?
Well, so here's what happened was...
Too weird.
Grant Morrison had, from what I remember, he had full intentions of doing more books than what he did. And he only did a few or a couple issues. And then Mark Millar took the torch. Yeah. So he basically they were kind of kicking ideas around together, and then he just took the torch.
I've seen that as a collection. It says Grant Morrison.
Yep.
So go pick those up. Real quick here, we're gonna wrap up the show here in a second, but we have a voicemail from a great man here called Sarge. He wants to let us know what he thinks of this book.
Sergeant America coming at you. Boom! You guys are actually probably in my top 5 people who I call, so I just, just be amazed on how many times I call you compared to anybody else. But anyway, I wanted to talk with you guys about the Swamp Thing. I know I always give you guys a little bit of grief about some of the topics or some of the books you pick. I totally understand why you picked this one. First and foremost, of course, the decision or origin on Holland. I'm sure you guys have caught me in the end, so I'll just spoil it. That he is remnants of a plant. He has memories implanted upon a thing. So he has lost his humanity. He's lost the desire to be a person. When he figures that out, I totally understand that that's why you guys chose this. It was very good for that. But there was a lot of dead material before, and I feel like a lot of dead material after. No pun intended with the dead material and plants. But I did have to say that it was good. I did like it. There was a lot of sharp bits of art in there, but of course that very loose style that was allowed to be done at that time. The amount of dialogue sometimes that was in there was a little tough. But still, I enjoyed it. I was able to get it on Hoopla. So once again, I thank you guys for choosing a free Hoopla book. It definitely was, something new. I don't read a lot of Swamp Thing. I'm actually a little more in Marvel, so I'm more of a Man Thing kind of guy. It was definitely, just wonderful to dig into this. I can't wait to hear, especially with John and his ideas on this. There, I'm sure was a lot of pieces that I'm not going to get until maybe a second reading. I'll definitely give it a year, then I'll give it a second reading. It was just enjoyable that you guys continue to do this. I'm thankful for the book club. Can't wait to find out what the next one is. So just keep reading and turning those pages. Catchphrase.
Catchphrase. There was nothing there jabbing at anybody.
So it sounds like he enjoyed it, but We did mention some.
Well, hold on though. The first one he enjoyed too, so we should almost give him like a round of applause for that. Sarge.
He mentioned a part where, like Alex was saying before the podcast. What?
Are those two buttons still pushed down?
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay.
I know how to run this thing. Alex has mentioned before the podcast that sometimes he would come to a page and be like, "That seems like a lot of dialogue,"
Yeah.
and like, but then it was fine. And I think Sarge had the same thing where he's like, "Oh, it was fine once you read it," but it does seem like a lot. It seemed like once again, I think we all are in agreement that Anatomy Lessons is great, and even he was like, "That was really great to see that," and maybe it's a little slower than some people like to get into. So, would you say so? Like, it is kind of slow to get into, and we talked before about Scott takes the opposite approach, it's kind of more of an action superhero thing. Do you personally believe that kind of takes away the essence of that character if you make him into that superhero guy?
Absolutely.
Like the monster is like
the amazing part of Swamp Thing is like the internal struggle, and also when he's utilizing his powers, he's not a superhero. So like you nailed it on the head by saying he's like kind of this unintentional superhero. Is like he's willing to be there for them, but he's not like searching for it. And so that's the great thing. And when you turn him into a superhero, it's almost like he has all these like ideas and a bag of tricks constantly. And the great thing about Swamp Thing traditionally is he always works smarter, not harder. He doesn't need to fly because he can be on the other side of the world in 2 seconds. He doesn't need to fly because he can grow up into the ozone and travel in space, you know. So it feels like it's just easy to grow wings. It's easy to throw armor on.
And didn't he make like actual like weapons that like kind of mimic like real? I think we were having like a sword.
Yeah,
and
he had a
stuff
wood
like
shield and a wood sword. It didn't
like,
make any sense.
But then like in this comic, like he was fighting with, he would like stab from behind and like punch and stuff like that. Like he's using the full earth like he should be because he's connected to it all.
Just think about as in T2, the liquid metal Terminator. He doesn't need to go find a sword. He's just like, boom, sword is on my hand, done. You know.
Would you say that? Are you excited for him to show up in Justice League Dark? Do you think it's going to be more of a superhero kind of, or is it actually going to? It's going to be Justice League Dark. So I mean, they have the supernatural elements.
I'm excited to see it. I just feel like they're putting too much like stock into the branded titles, like Justice League Dark. It's like I don't know. It feels like it's too much of like a marketing campaign instead of just being like a good story. I'm excited to see the artwork and anything with Swamp Thing, and it's awesome. But I don't know. DC's just keeps putting a bad taste in my mouth. Like every time something neat starts up, it just dies on the vine. Do
you foresee this Swamp Thing character for a hot second here has been showing up randomly in like special appearances, one shots, winter specials? Does he get his own series again?
So here's my theory, and people can disagree, obviously. But so Greg Capullo keeps talking about how the next book he wants to work on is going to be Swamp Thing. He just needs to finish up all this Batman stuff. But my feeling is that Greg Capullo is in such high demand, he's going to be too busy to do an ongoing series. So I think he's going to do maybe like an origin one shot, or maybe like start a series or something like that. But I think that Swamp Thing is in a ton of books this year. I think that the DC might be trying to inject him in more and more stories and more cameos across the whole board. So it gives Greg Capullo the platform. So he has to do kind of less legwork because there's more of a Swamp Thing presence. And so once the cash cow Capullo is doing a book, everyone's going to be like shift right to it, you know?
Yeah.
I feel like you're giving DC too much credit.
Oh, yeah.
They're like, let's think really far ahead for Capullo.
Right.
I bet they're like, you know what? This book needs some more.
To be fair, though, they are making a TV show out of it. They thought far enough to be like, let's make a TV show out of this. Yeah. So they obviously want to do more with that character. And DC loves to be like, we have a TV show about that. Let's put out a comic. So I wouldn't be surprised if they are working on something that's more than just a winter special or something like that.
They'd be dumb not to.
Yeah. At that point in time when it comes out, especially like I said, if it's a hit, if like people are like, this is the best thing ever, and it makes people get that DC service to watch it, and they don't have a comic that they can read, especially if like DC would never do this, but I think it's smart, but they're scared of losing the comic retailers, but to have it be like, watch the first episode and go, oh, here's a new series, like read this. And I was saying before, like they could have like, even if you watch that first episode and then they have this book on there, hey, you watched that and you enjoyed it, read this. So like they have the advantage of being like, we're going to have media content that's video, but also like, hey, on the same service, you can read this.
Yeah.
And get people into comics. So,
quick question about that, John. Fan casting. Who plays Swamp Thing in that live
Man,
action?
I'm so bad at this. I don't know. I'm so bad at this. No.
I am excited though for James Wan to direct those. Because have you seen any of his movies? Right, Conjuring, Insidious.
Saw.
Yeah, that man understands horror, and I think I'm excited to see, especially the tropes of horror and stuff like that. When we were talking about like that, Alan Moore and the team on this book knew to tap into. I think James Wan is that same kind of guy. So I'm excited to see that. That is Saga, the Swamp Thing, book 1. Go ahead and get it. Alan Moore and what are the artist names?
So John Toddleman and Stephen Bissett.
Not $5 on Comixology if you want to get it digitally. If you want to get it print, Alex, how much was it? $15 if you want to get it in print. Like
I guess depending where you go to get it.
And if you want to find those issues, go out and find those issues. Those are the definitive edition, but it might be a little harder to find. SuperCon 2018, Return of the Con, September 28th, 29th, and 30th. Tickets on sale at supercon.com. Alex, we're going to be there doing a show, aren't we?
Yeah, we're going to be there on the 28th doing a live show for everyone. What's it going to be called? Wednesday Comics After Dark.
And not only us are going to be there, a lot of people are going to be there. Phil Hester, right, Garrett?
Yes, Phil Hester, the current artist of Batman Beyond. He's done other projects like Shipwreck. He's done some Swamp Thing that you may or may not have seen, and some Holland Files that came out recently.
Not only Phil, signed Steve, Shea Fontana, Tony Fleece, Travis Nye, Midwest, all doing a show the 28th. They'll be doing a show that night. That's the main attraction that night. Jill Thompson, Ryan Cody, John Allen, and more. Tom Wynn. Going to be at supercon.com. Make sure there's a lot going on that weekend. I would say, if I am going to tell you any kind of advice, buy that weekend pass. You won't regret it. You got MAP concert that night also. You got Wednesday Comics After Dark. And then you got a whole weekend of stuff to do, people to see. Supercon.com for more information. What's this book called? Book club called?
Wednesday Comics League of Extraordinary Gentle People.
And you have 3 more months to read a book. And what's that book we're going to be reading?
Well, I got to present it. Wednesday Comics League of Extraordinary Gentle People proudly presents The Sandman, Volume 1, Preludes and Nocturnes, written by Neil Gaiman with art by Sam Keith, Mike Dringenberg, and Malcolm Jones III.
So we're going to be reading Sandman, another book that people... we're going through these essentials and seeing what actually is essential.
Kind of getting into the supernatural book club here pretty soon.
And I think it's a nice little step from Swamp Thing, and then we're going to this here, both Vertigo books. And but this might be a good tie-in, Gary. You're a good choice. Duncan Jones on Twitter has been hinting at that he's making a new comic. He didn't say superhero. A new comic book movie, and he's going to announce it soon. And it's a dream come true, he said. And it might be Sandman, I think.
And also a nice little tidbit to segue from the Swamp Thing trade paperback to this one. Matt Cable, when everything's said and done and he's dead and he moves on, he becomes Matt the Raven, which is in Sandman.
Nice little tie-in. And also a new Sandman series is starting up here soon. So it's going to tie nice into that. And so go and get that and read up. You got 3 months. What date would that be? Alex, you're good at dates.
Well, I don't know. It depends on if we're doing
October.
Well, I'm just saying if it's the original date, then it'd be like the 4th.
But October is the month, right?
Yes.
So listen, you have at least got to October, and then we'll talk about Sandman. Good tie-in also with Halloween. So there you go.
Yeah.
It's almost like you planned it out that way.
Wednesday Comics 605 at gmail.com. Email us what you thought I was talking about Swamp Thing or what you think of the Sandman. And also the time to campaign Alex for his book is today. Get him in early.
It's like, I'm open to suggestions. Do what you guys want us to talk about. Let me know.
Lumberjanes.
My Little Pony.
Is it? Yeah. Would you guys even read My Little Pony?
It's a children's book, but
choice.
Lumberjanes is the shit.
We were talking about that
Boom,
because
right?
it just passed 50 issues, and I was saying that's one series. I was seeing I actually got into that.
I'll let you borrow them. I have all of them.
Oh yeah. So
Is there plants in
think
there?
about it, but still,
They're cutting down plants.
that
It's so weird that you're a Swamp Thing aficionado, and then you read a book about girls cutting down trees.
I don't think they cut a single tree down.
Okay, well that's good then.
It's like the Boy Scouts, but like they're badass, awesome, cool chicks.
It's kinda like-
they're little girls.
I always say my good mood's Superman, my bad mood's Batman. So your good mood is Swamp Thing, and your bad mood is people cutting down trees.
This is a children's book.
his bad mood is then a Dexter. Spoilers. At Wednesday Comics on Twitter, at Karat2188, at Alex Pastrello, at DC World Swampy, and at Marvin_Saguero. Go ahead and follow us on Twitter or on Facebook at facebook.com/Wednesday Comics Podcast, facebook.com/Roots of the Swamp Thing. Also go to rootsofswampthing.com. A lot of articles about this. If you're interested now that you read the Swamp Thing, go there. A lot of good information. A lot of stuff that he was referencing throughout the issue and showing us is articles on the website. It is this book broken down and examined, and that's what you want to read. And once again, you want to be on that site when Holland Files number 3 comes out, and you pre-order it and get that thing. It's hot. And people get it. Like he said, he's getting people that are deep into the Swamp Thing and have done things. So you want to get it because it's going to have great information for you to read.
I have a question about the Holland Files. You ever thought about doing like a play-by-play, like each issue, kind of do your thoughts on each issue? So
Well,
if someone did a read-through, like you'd be like, this is what I know about this issue.
Well, I do it on my website.
You got your website,
Yeah.
so
So
go through
that's
there?
yeah.
Okay. I'm going to do that.
Yeah, in fact, so you just on rootsoftheswampthing.com, you just go to appearances, and then under appearances, there's a list of the different decades or eras of the series, and then I'm currently working on every single issue having a recap, but I have the Origins, House of Secrets 92, all the way up to I'm currently on Swamp Thing number 34 or 35 currently.
Okay, so at least the first 2 trades of this.
Yep,
Alan Moore
absolutely.
run. Cool.
Find us on YouTube, and you can find the podcast, but also Catching Up with Garrett and the Gauntlet with these two. And those, what they got each week. And
I'm going to buy your early show.
605.
We've already filled
I said
that quota.
I'm pretty sure that Catching Up with Garrett's become a buy your early show.
He's already met that quota this year.
Oh, yeah, you sent me the Gauntlet. I should probably do that. Excuse
See,
me.
it wasn't my fault this time.
Well,
This time.
he uploads that thing in the middle of the night. I'm sleeping, and then he
Middle of the day.
605-215-1849.
He's also sleeping then.
605-215-1849. Leaves a voicemail like Sarge did there, and we'll play it on the show. Supercon 2018, Return of the Con. That's September 28th, 29th, and 30th. We will be there on the 28th doing a live show, and we need you in the audience to be like the Swamp Thing. Show up. I don't know. But also,
By the way, that
pay your
may
pass.
terrify all of us if we just show
But
up.
we don't want Groot. No Groot.
Show up out of nowhere at admissions so you can get in. Not past admissions. We don't need that. Subscribe to the show on Stitcher Radio, Google Podcasts, and Apple Podcasts, and Spotify. Let your friends know about Wednesday Comics. We will be off next week, but we have a special episode for you about the supernatural. It's going to tie in nice with this horror Swamp Thing we talked about. We will have in between a regular forecast. We are going to do a forecast, and then Marvin's off to the woods to find the Swamp Thing, and then I'll be back, and we'll go back to our regular schedule, and then be ready for the live show. Like I said, get your tickets. It's coming up here quick, and we need that room to be filled because you want to see the shenanigans that are going to go on. For Wednesday Comics, I am the Green. Marvin.
I'm Alex.
I'm Garrett.
I'm Estrogen the Demon.
Hey, everyone, keep turning those pages.